All right, and there we are. Hi there, how y'all doing? Oh, this Sunday is treating you all well and had a good overall weekend and all that. Yeah, I haven't had the habit of doing Sunday streams in a while, so yeah, don't expect to have been on point with the schedule today. It's quite expected. Also, hi there goes. Congrats on being second. So yeah, also yeah, hey there, yes, stream is happening. I'm really sorry. I don't know, this week has been all over the place for me. I've been really tired for some reason, low energy, and I've moved this stream around for a bit. I know, I'm really sorry about that. So I apologize, but hey, at the very least I'm keeping with the promise that I'm doing it this week, which is why I decided to, no matter what, I'm gonna do it on Sunday. Whatever. So by the end of the week, I'm still doing it. And so yeah, I'm really sorry about that. It's probably gonna be just mostly a chill chat and all that sort of thing. But yeah, yeah, it's one of those things where I know this was a promise, so I kind of wanted to keep up with it compared to, you know, other things where it's just me doing the schedule and that's it. Because yeah, otherwise I would have not canceled. Also, let me give you a shout out, Ghosty, there if you're still on the break. It happens and I'm excited for this. Yeah, also once again thank you Level for offering this exclusive quick sneak peek behind the scenes of stuff that is in the works and to be released at some point. That's up to you to decide when. I understand the feeling of things need to be done whenever they're gonna be done. But yeah, because yeah, I noticed there was a bit of excitement for this one. You know, I guess I didn't make too much fanfare of it. I need to get better at that, I'll be honest. But yeah, that's definitely one of the things. So slowly getting back into gear, I suppose. It's still the beginning of the year. Oh boy, and what a beginning we have. Not even gonna get into that. But yeah, aside from that, before we get into the meat of things, yeah, the update's been in work for like 3-4 months. Yeah, that kind of stuff is happening all over the place. Also, yeah, if you're seeing that, you know, I'm talking in multiple places, once again, as a reminder, I am multi-streaming, so I am talking with Level Ghost. I am talking with Level right now, or Jan, or Jan is fine. I think it's fine, Jan. I'm seeing that Ghost is referring you as Jan, so I'll go with Jan, I suppose. You know, everybody, I guess, goes all over the place, and this is one of the few times where I'm actually having to keep track of both chats. Yeah, so yeah. But yeah, I understand that feeling. Oh boy, I need to get back onto my work at some point as well. Yeah, go by Jan. Okay, noted. I'll keep in mind. Great. So, before we get into the meat of things, I'm not sure if I have something specific to mention or announce or anything else of the sorts. Let me try. Unfortunately, my YouTube doesn't have my proper name. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, technically, you could go with the channel if you have that logged in, because you still have your YouTube channel. That's, or you say that doesn't have the current username on YouTube. That's gonna also be like a thing. I get it, Ghost. It's fine. To be fair, hey, I am multi-streaming for the pure purpose of, you know, people choosing the platform that they prefer. I'm not saying which one to choose. I'm just saying you go the one you want to go. Twitch, don't be mad at me. And just say people have choices. I'm not directing them to any choice. They just have them. I'm also planning to, at some point, once I probably redo my setup for the stream, to also probably have TikTok or some other platform as well. I know, like, also on YouTube there's now the function to multi-stream on both formats, portrait and landscape, so I have to also figure that one out at some point. Yeah, I have a bit of a backlog that I need to get back to. Oh boy. So that's definitely gonna be a thing sometime. I don't know. But that's not related to anything immediate to talk about. But yeah, as I mentioned before, yeah, nothing to announce, I'm pretty sure. There is gonna be something to announce, but that's gonna be probably somewhere next week, not today. I'm still figuring out. To be fair, the logistics are gonna be figured out for the course of the month, but there's gonna be like an initial announcement, probably somewhere at the end of next week, something like that. So that I'm gonna leave it for that. Outside of that, I think the schedule is gonna be as usual. I don't think there's any new releases or anything like that of the sorts for next week, if I remember correctly. No, the Enfield stuff is gonna happen 2 weeks from now, so that's when we're gonna do it. So yeah, that's completely fine. I mean, I guess because I don't have too much chat, and you know, a lot of the chatting and keeping up with the world and all that sort of stuff has been happening in the past days, and you know, I've considered that I've also streamed yesterday as well. So yeah, first and foremost, because this is a tabletop RPG stream, just in case people do not understand what's going on around here and or how exactly I have these kind of streams formatted. My intent with these these streams, specifically the ones that are dedicated to for me discussing tabletop stuff, is in general to be a space for people to just generally chat about this kind of thing. So you know, if you feel like you want to talk about something specific related to the topic, or maybe even somewhat unrelated, which is completely fine. Feel free to it. I want this to be a space where people can like join in, you know, gush about the stuff that they love about tabletop RPGs, things they enjoy, all that sort of things. And who knows, maybe if also I'll be out there to help each other out, offer helping guides, suggestions, all that sort of good stuff. Maybe, you know, you're really excited of something that you're planning for a game session or whatever system that may be. Maybe you're unclear of some things, you want to ask out some stuff, and you know, both myself or maybe some people around here in the chats can offer some suggestions, either more pertinent if they are more familiar with the system than I am. To the best of my abilities, in case I'm not familiar with the system, I just can offer like some generic advice. I have a bit of experience overall, just I guess to offer the resume to some degree overall. Like probably most people, I've started with D&D like 5th edition a while back, 2018 I think at this point. Yeah, I'm getting close to like what, 8 years almost of just this. Yeah, it's been almost like 8 years since. But yeah, D&D 5th edition, equal amounts both player and game master within that space for a good chunk of time. But in more recent years, I've decided to branch out and wanted to explore other systems and other games. I'm most familiar, and the point of starting happened almost 2 years ago. It's we're getting to a 2-year almost a 2-year anniversary with some Hunter the Reckoning 1st edition, and that was kind of my dip into the World of Darkness stuff, and what I've started with as well. Some other broad things, as of course, like Vampire the Masquerade, Gestalt RPG, and for those who do not know necessarily or too familiar with Gestalt, because that one is also a bit niche, it's the best way I can put an example to it is if you put like D&D 5th edition and like Pathfinder 2nd edition into like two ends of a spectrum. Gestalt is somewhere in the middle. Like, it's a bit more complex than D&D, but not as complex or as granular with customization as Pathfinder is. It's kind of a median of the two, sort of. And also Pathfinder as well, that's also another one. And many others that I'm interested into checking out. And as systems that we've talked in the past, we've checked Lancer. We've actually had a deeper discussion of Gestalt on here, of the core books as well. We looked at the Daggerhead playtest at the time when the Daggerhead was in a playtest version. I do want to at some point jump into checking out that system. Just don't have the funds for it. I think it's back in stock in EU, so I could probably order it because I do want to get the physical version. But actually, I don't think they can sell PDFs at the moment. I think they only sell physical with a PDF included. But anyways, the Daggerhead. A few like quick looks at some starter stuff for like things like GURPS, Mothership RPG, Call of Cthulhu, Candle Obscura, Called Divinity Lost. We've checked a lot of like the starter guides for those, for like a Halloween-ish kind of roundup thing as well, which was a lot of fun. I would like to get more into like some other like horror-esque ones, but like in full version ones, and there might be some other ones out there that I might be looking into. It might be we might be able to check out Beam Saber at some point. I've had a chat with a friend that we've kind of went under a agreement to do a trade, and I might be able to get my hands on a Beam Saber copy, and maybe we can check that out at some point. But yeah, as I said, generally decent. If I've not played it, at the very least I might have looked into some systems here and there, and there's many others that I want to check out as well. So yeah, if I'm not familiar with something, I can still at the very least offer a generic advice, and then, you know, based on your knowledge of the rulings, or, you know, you looking through the core books yourself, you can then make a more appropriate to the guide, to not the guidelines necessarily, to the rule sets as it seems, as you see fit. But yeah, that's the general introduction things. I don't think there's much else for me to go through. It's just the general stuff that usually happens. So why not put myself onto the actual preview screen. I'm pretty sure I have the right version. Yeah, I do have the right version. Just double checking, because I'll be honest, it's also a bit of a blind look for me as well, also because I'm really bad at keeping up with this, and I at some point I do want to figure out a better formatting for these streams. Usually the way they go, I just kind of, if I'm not familiar with the system already, or I've not had the experience of play with it, I'm mostly just having kind of like a first look on stream and kind of going through the book as we go, and just, you know, have like some first impression and first thoughts of it. So, you know, again, as I said, first thoughts, and to be very clear and fair, even though I have a bit of knowledge, and, you know, I am a game designer by trade and whatnot, I also am equally understanding that some elements translate a lot better in play than just purely through theorizing and reading. So yeah, I can analyze to the best of my abilities, but that's not going to be a finalized opinion until I actually might have an opportunity to actually play it at some point, which, who knows, maybe someday there's gonna be an opportunity. Moving to so my text shows up. Yeah, by the way, just as a reminder, anything that is overlay related, which at the moment most of it has been stripped out because I want to redo it, but the chat has still been the one that has remained, is Twitch exclusive, mostly to be TOS compliant and all that. That's basically the reason. So yeah, if you really care for that, and you want to be on the chat, you can then, you know, move on to Twitch. If you prefer to be a bit more anonymous and just have a chat and not necessarily have the fear that, you know, it's visible on stream, then yeah, you have other platforms you at your disposal to do so. So yeah, at some point, as I said before, I am hopefully trying to find like a different formula. The way I usually do it, at the very least, is try to kind of like cover chunks that focus on a specific topic. Game overview overall, like just general idea of how the game works, or what are like the core mechanics that will be introduced. Depending on the system, that section might be a bit in depth, might be really short. It really depends. So I appreciate the follow, King Udap. I think I pronounced that correctly. I think so, hopefully. If not, I'm sorry. I appreciate the follow. I appreciate the support. So yeah, it's usually either like a general introduction to mechanics. Depending on the system, that could be a bit more in depth. In other cases, it could be a bit shorter. So depending on that, it might not be a singular stream thing. If not, then we also jump into character creation as part of it. If not, that could be an exclusive stream. Then more in depth general game mechanics for another, and I finalize usually with game master elements and game master chapters as kind of like the final things. Anything that comes more as, you know, listed, or either like listed features or listed options or anything else of the sort, so like, you know, classes, abilities, In some cases, maybe even skill checks, items, bestiaries, that sort of thing. That one I don't really go too in depth on these first looks. That's because at the same time, I'm not here to, you know, scan the entire book and for you to, you know, for you to basically have it on view. If you want to have a full in-depth look and have every nook and cranny of the book, then I would recommend you actually support the authors and, you know, and get the book there, which I should offer a link while I'm at it, because that should be something now that we are actually discussing it. I know how to type. Ignore me. There we go. Let me pin it. Time being, because this is a bit more indie, so I feel like it should be readily available. I think I've also have it in the descriptions of other platforms. The VOD is definitely gonna have a description on it on the other platform. I mean, the book is free, no worries about it. Yeah, I know the book is free, so it's completely fine about it. But that's also a method for me to kind of encourage people. Like, you know, we are, both me and probably many others are appreciative of free of use tabletop RPGs, but believe me, I know very well. I design my own things from time to time. I want to actually get a bit more in depth into working on my own projects. Hopefully this year as well. When it comes to tabletop RPGs, I'm also a game designer in, like, you know, I've been game studio, so I know that kind of shit is work. I believe me, I'm probably one of the few out here that understands that's work and effort. And even though you're putting your free time, and it's most in some scenarios it could be just simply a hobby, I want to show respect for the hustle and you know, show support. And at the end of the day, hey, it is free, but as the platform as to it is usually formatted, you can still show support to them by donating, or if not, just simply talking about it, playing the game, all that sort of stuff. Like, that's kind of my way of showing support to these systems or to these kind of projects, be they big or small. If they intrigue me, or they have been a recommendation by people that I value their perspective, and that I'm doing this kind of as a show of support if I cannot do it financially, because I believe me, otherwise I would do it. But yeah, I fully understand, but that's me also encouraging. Plus, I'm leaving all those other aspects of, like, things like bestiary, class options, all that other stuff, or maybe other future ideas, maybe. For me, these streams are mostly just to have a general coverage of the game system. So we're looking at the more important sections of it, what I would consider more important sections, you know, because the other things like a specific a particular skill set, a particular class, a particular bestiary or beast or item or anything like that, those are the finer details that, you know, can be understood and looked at as you go. I'm here to kind of mostly check the broader strokes of a game. So yeah, now to the best of my abilities, and to, you know, what I've read of it, at the least through the description and from my understanding of it, Tactiquest is an almost diceless tabletop RPG system. So it's gonna be as minimal, from my understanding. It's just a few setups require dice, but outside from that, it's nothing else is required. At the very least, you're not required to use dice for any sort of scenario resolution. So they're not going to be a factor that determine outcome. They might just determine a scenario. But outside of that, it's just mostly strategic and tactful play. And most of it, from the looks, from what I've seen, it's quite familiar and quite akin to a lot of classic tabletop RPGs, especially within the fantasy genre. But I'm pretty sure that the general concept of it can be adapted to other concepts as well. Mostly player-driven, sandbox, from the looks of it. So yeah, again, I'm summarizing this through the general descriptions. We're gonna get a better understanding as we're gonna go through the book and read it, and do all fun things. You just get a sip. I'm also having a coffee right now. I'm a bit groggy because I did have a bit of a rest before jumping into stream, so I'm also slowly getting into gear with all this. Because Sundays are usually a chill day for me, and depending on how they go. But yeah, I think it's a good point to jump into it. We're not gonna quickly zooming to have a look at the table content. So yeah, I'm pretty sure like for today we're probably gonna go through a good chunk of the initial chapters, because probably even a bit of character creation if we're gonna be speedy about it. I'm pretty sure. Then, you know, we'll see from there. But I think the first initial chapters are gonna be a good start. Also, I'm gonna say this. I do like the kind of like, you know, sketch styling and aesthetic of all kind of the art style across the book. I do like it. It is evocative of the general idea of, you know, of kind of the old school kind of pen and paper, but at the same time the whole idea that, you know, you can play an RPG and you can play, you know, a tabletop game with basically any anything you have on hand. So you don't necessarily need anything fancy to have a meaningful play session. You can just do it with whatever, a piece of napkin and a pencil, all that sort of thing. Thank you. I do all the books art myself. That is amazing. I do appreciate that. Yeah, I honestly, I appreciate, I don't know, to me, at the very least, it is evocative to that concept or to that idea that, hey, you don't need much to play a tabletop RPG, just a few guidelines, a few ideas, maybe something to keep track of, a few notes here and there, and that's basically it. You can go from there. Anything else, it's basically at the palm of your hand. You don't really need too much, especially in a technology-driven day where, you know, you can even have a dice roller on the phone if need be. So we're gonna go into it. As I said before, I'm usually kind of like reading through them, reading through the chapters, and at some points have my own stop and my own ideas of it. Or if anything about it is more, you know, I guess lore or setting driven, not gonna have too much to say probably, but if it's anything mechanical, then yeah. So, introduction. You are a traveler, having forgone a life of thankless toil to make your own luck in the wider world. The wilds are frightening, but you are your own, beholden to no crown or kingdom. Many troubles plague the world. Terrible tyrants, malevolent monsters, and ancient evils rule the land. Life for peasants and heroes alike is filled with adversity and adversaries. Everywhere you look, you'll find a problem to solve, people to save, and villains to vanquish. But there is an adventure to be had. You may be an aspiring hero or just trying to find your next meal. Either way, you lead an eventful life, encountering dangers and wonders in equal measure. Yeah, already from the general introduction, quite evocative to the classical kind of fantasy style games, which is fine. It's always okay to go also back to the classics. I think I only always see it as a point of comfort, or as a kind of like a point to kind of like roll back to every once in a while, and that's something that I've always, at the least to me, maybe there's a lingering like psychological level. I feel like that's always at the very least the starting point for anybody. Like, we all do at the very least once the general hero's journey of a tabletop adventure in a very kind of classical kind of fantasy style before anything more. I don't know, we go in more in depth. I feel like it's a comfort point for a lot of people, because, you know, it's akin to a ton of like fantasy fairy tales, you know, even childhood moments, and without too much thought or effort about it. And I think like a lot of people can easily kind of shift their mindset into that and have a bit of a comfort, and it's also kind of a testing ground to figure out how, you know, you play with others. Yeah, Dawn 1 is very gamey, typical fantasy RPG. There is not a ton of terms of really a unique setting, which is good, honestly. But to be fair, it's something that I generally appreciate. I'm not saying that it's bad overall to have something tied to a setting. It really depends on what kind of system you're looking for. But overall, yeah, I appreciate systems or settings of systems, actually, that are mostly setting are agnostic or in some way are designed in such a way where you don't necessarily feel akin that you need to look into some specific type of world to have this this game kind of function, and especially for a tactics focused system, that sort of concept which is mostly mechanical. Yeah, as you mentioned, a toolkit for the kind of fantasy campaign that I was running, and yeah, it's kind of a toolkit for a campaign of any sorts. That's nice and easy, because I'm pretty sure a lot of the concepts here can be easily reflavored, re-envisioned, if not even probably slightly retooled and reworked, and they can be made fit in any sort of concept. And those are nice, of course. Every system is designed in its own way. I personally like the ones that are a bit more akin to almost an agnostic sort of setting, mostly because, you know, it enables a lot more creativity on my end, and even the player's end, of creating their own things and their own worlds and their own stories with it, and just have the, you know, just have the setting as kind of the framework, the foundation of it all. The system, not the setting, sorry. So, what's this game about? It's a role-playing game. One is the game master, the one that creates and runs the world. 3 to 6 players who take the role of adventures in that world. Tactiquest is part of a tradition of fantasy role-playing games about adventures, exploring dangerous lands, battling terrible monsters, growing in strength from their difficult experiences, and making their mark on the world. I'm gonna be honest. Interesting that I think you mentioned it's interesting I mentioned 3 to 6 players. To me, it has always been, and this might be akin to like a writing style. But again, this is just a personal preference. I've slowly grown into enjoying even smaller groups, but to me, at the very least, when it comes to like larger groups, I've always enjoyed more of the one game master, 3 players kind of setup at the minimum. I think it's kind of very akin to the, you know, the powerful trio sort of scenario, you know, the Holy Trinity, all that kind of thing. I think it's somewhat embedded a bit into like the also like storytelling and all that. You have a lot of variety with you get access to a lot of variety if you have at least 3 people engage into a story of who you know, everyone is, you know, the hero, the lancer, the heart, that sort of thing. And of course, you can go lower or higher, but the game works best with 3 to 6. Yeah, that's understandable. At the end of the day, you can adapt it. I've started to enjoy a bit more, and that's mostly through Ghost's shenanigans of our one-to-one sessions of some of our WOD games. I've on occasions have begun enjoying one-to-one, but when it comes to like group settings, to me personally, I've always felt like 3 is the best minimum amount you can have to have an interesting story. I'm sure you can have interesting and fun games. It's just has always been a personal preference of mine of at least having 3 people at the table alongside with me as the game master. Also, Thy Tribe, thank you for the follow. I do appreciate it. Also, for anyone out here who's following, if you want to chat, you can chat. If you want to lurk, you can lurk. It's completely fine. All are appreciated here, all form of support, so you don't have to worry about it if you need to engage or anything like that. I'm just here to kind of show thanks for you know, jumping in, saying hi, deciding to follow, doing all that sort of fun things. And from that point onwards, it's up to you what you want to do on stream. Now, getting the general introduction aside, a quick summary of how it plays. Dice resolutions, unlike most tabletop RPGs, Success or failure is never determined by a die roll. No randomness gives players a clear understanding of their actions and enhances their ability to plan ahead. Less emphasis on luck and more careful planning and strategy. Dice are still often used, but only to set up situations and never to resolve them. Players' decision ultimately determine their fate, not the whims of a die roll. 3 is a fun number. It gives you a few different perspectives, relationships, roles, without becoming too many to keep in mind or to manage. Yeah, I mean, to be fair, we're getting into weird, like, literary aspects of it, which I'm not the best at. I'm okay-ish, but narrative writing has never been my forte. But yeah, 3 is always known as the magic number, the lucky number. 3 on a psychological level, I'm pretty sure it has a lot of influence. I think to us, and there is something about it. Because even in elements of choice, for example, usually the perfect amount of usually going over 3. Some even mention 5. Somewhere between 3 to 5 choices is the most amount of choices you should offer a person, because otherwise they get into what is known as analysis paralysis. Goes into the same idea that, you know, it's easier to understand the pros and cons. Many aspects of why the number 3 is really important psychologically, culturally, you know, as a structure and a form of organization, and many other aspects. So I feel like it makes sense for people to feel kind of comfortable leaning into that kind of number. Both my home games have 3 players, and it's a very comfortable number for this game. Makes sense. Yeah, like most of the games that I've run, at the very least the ones I've run long term, have been with 3 players, and that's kind of also where I'm coming with this personal bias of it, because I've had a lot of fun. But anyway, I'm saying with 3 where 3 was the minimum. I've had crazy games where, you know, I've had up to like 7 players, which I'll be fair, it's crazy. Depending on the game system, it can be a slog. It was D&D in my situation. I was still a beginning DM, so which is something that I do not recommend. Do not make my mistake. If you're a starting game master, don't make the mistake I made of saying like, yeah, let's just have 7 other fucking people with me and try to play a game and see how it goes. Because oh boy, it got all over the place. But yeah, that number whittled down to me and a 3-player group overall. Not because I necessarily put my foot down and decided to, you know, kick people out. It just kind of naturally trickled down until, you know, there was a core number that stuck around, which is completely fair. Hey, we're not here to waste anybody's time. If you don't want to commit, you don't want to commit. That's completely fine to me. But yeah, I've run games of I've either run or been in games of different sizes, and yeah. At times it has always kind of trickled down to that 3 number, or in some scenarios, depending on the group, I also go by the logic of if it's below half of our number, I usually cancel, just because, you know, it's too big of a chunk is missing. But again, it really depends. At the time, you know, scheduling and availability was easier to have. These days, I might be willing to run with as many people as I have available, because I understand that life is life, and it's better to just run a game than to just necessarily cancel it if too many people, if just a few people decide to leave. Like, usually half is generally a minimum. I might be willing to go around, but definitely 3. If somehow it's 3, it's not necessarily the half, but it's the bare minimum that I'm always considering. I'm always down to run. I feel like it's always going to be fun and engaging that way. But anyway, side tangent of number 3 aside, because that's weird ass. That's gonna be like a big side tangent if we're gonna keep at it. So, fast and tactical battles. Combat is a big focus on this game, taking up a large chunk of the rules. No wasted turns and no stuns mean the battle keeps moving, with a heavy emphasis on positioning, teamwork, and tactics. Also, like a quick thing that I forgot to mention. Well, kind of forgot because I was kind of, you know, wanted to have a quick quick talk about this as well. because I've actually had some conversations with some people in some other circles, in some other places, of people that actually discuss about this entire aspect of not really having a lot of fun or not jumping into tabletop RPGs purely for the sake and aspect of randomness, of not enjoying the concept that, you know, certain outcomes and certain results are left to the whims of fate, to the whims of the die. Which is completely fair and completely understandable. I can get that, you know, it can be a lot of frustrating. And having known people and I've encountered individuals who, I don't know, I don't know what eldritch deity they have angered, but in most scenarios have the worst rolls possible, which is really weird. But I've had those kind of people in my games. I'm always having like bad rolls and always trying to figure out some ways so they don't, you know, they're not handicapped all across, because, you know, it sucks. I've had my own moments where, you know, I've not performed well with my dice as well, and at times that also kind of annoyed me from time to time. So I can completely understand for some people being out there that's a point of frustration. That's a point to where they're losing their fun, which is completely understandable. Because yeah, for someone who's looking for more strategic elements, for more aspects where, you know, their own planning, their own tactics should be rewarded, but, you know, then get fumbled because just the dice decided to say, well, it's just not gonna work at the very least, or maybe it's gonna work, but it's not gonna work the way you wanted it to work. It can feel bad at times. I am the type that I roll with what I get in most scenarios. I'll be honest, I'm not saying that I'm perfect. I've had my moments of annoyance and where, you know, I felt really bad that I was failing my shit because just the dice decided to say so. But at the same time, I enjoy the chaos. But that's just me. I completely understand why people sometimes don't jump or fell off quickly from the tabletop scene because of this aspect. So these kinds of systems are a nice change of pace and a great welcome, in my opinion. And I'll be fair, I don't think I've tried personally, at the least I've not experienced yet or gotten too heavily into a dice or a dice list only, at very least not one where the resolutions are diceless. Technically, I did do a one shot for the Halloween charity a few months back. The Witch is Dead, by the same creator who made the Honey Heist, which technically it's almost diceless. At the very least, it's minimal in dice requirement. It technically still has the dice to figure out certain resolutions, but overall it's a lot more just roleplay and just going with the flow and just playing around and just having some fun and with just a bit of die thrown around here and there, but not necessarily the pure and only thing to determine an outcome. Just it's still mostly used for aspect of determining resolutions, but hey, yeah, I find it super fun and satisfying that my plans just work, particularly when it comes to like out of combat stuff. As some deities of the game scene have once said, it just works. It just works. Yeah, putting combat aside, because combat is like the biggest factor probably where a lot of people probably fell off with this concept where, you know, they don't perform too well. It's kind of like an XCOM thing where, you know, you have 99% chance to succeed, but you always hit that weird 1%. That's another like weirdness talk about, where technically, you know, no RNG, no digital RNG is true RNG. But that's a whole ass rabbit hole. I think Hank Green had a video about it, of what is on the concept of like true RNG and all that, but most of it's not really there when it comes to like a lot of like computer systems or even games, because true RNG, our human psychology, our human behavior behaves or considers true RNG to be a random cycle of all the numbers that we get on a die, for example. So we feel like RNG should be something like we get a 1, then we get a 20, then maybe we get a 19 and 18. But RNG can also mean getting 3 1s in a row, even though it doesn't feel like RNG. Sometimes that's also RNG. You know, on a statistical scale, on a probability wise, very unlikely, but it can still happen. So yeah, that's also like another aspect of the human psyche, and probably also why it's related to this aspect of some people not enjoying the true aspect of RNG, because again, it feels like sometimes it doesn't feel random, it sometimes just feels unfair. Not necessarily just because the dice decide to say otherwise, but yeah, usually combat is a big thing. But I can also see it definitely in scenarios where you are there to show your skill set, to show that, you know, you have a character that it's really good at doing a thing, and just somehow your dice decides that no, you're just not gonna succeed at that thing, even though within the game we say, even though by the way you have your character built, it should say that, hey, you are really good at this kind of thing, so you should not really fail at this type of thing. Again, there's also aspects of how exactly you determine if a skill roll is required or not in those scenarios as well, because, you know, I would even say that to kind of emphasize progression and emphasize that, hey, your character has advanced, in some scenarios you might forgo a dice roll to kind of emphasize that, hey, this task maybe would have been a bit more of an involvement to you, or a bit more in depth in the past, but you know, you've progressed through the game, you've advanced, you've become better, so now it's become mundane to you, so there's no need for you to roll. But again, it's also like another aspect. Okay, you've made a certain archetype, a certain type of character that emphasizes on certain skill sets, and it feels bad when you kind of all of a sudden are shown to be underperforming a skill set that you should be good at. But yeah, that's another thing. Just closing the parentheses of dice and diceless sort of play in general. Yeah, yeah, with the fast attack, with the tactic style battles, not much to to mention here, because, you know, to be fair, I'm an enjoyer of combat. To be fair, mostly because some of my initial groups have been more combat and mechanics heavy. Again, I come from the game development scene, and I've run games or played games in some of my first games that I played or run were with other people within that scene. So of course, most of us kind of think on the mechanical, think on the technical side, and semi min-max, semi optimize the game to hell and back. So of course, for us, for those games, combat was an important aspect because, you know, that's the point where we kind of like show off what we kind of like built. Which, hey, it's fun, and sometimes it's a challenge, especially as a first-time game master, because that's kind of what I dealt with. And when you're still like figuring out how to deal with balance, or still trying to understand certain concepts. And I'm not the biggest min-maxer myself. I am to some extent here and there if I need to, can at the very least optimize to some extent, but that's not the fun I'm looking for. I'm just there to, I usually am the type to build on themes. That's kind of my go-to, but I've been in circles where, you know, the min-maxing and the tactics and the combat are kind of like the big side of it. So yeah. At the same time, I am an enjoyer of the roleplay scene as well. Technically, I think more personal, I kind of have a bit more of a connection with that, and just more of my gaming aspects enjoy the combat side. But anyways, so Dangerous Journey. Players must travel through arduous wilds where healing is limited and resources are slowly ground down. Exploration and resource management are a heavy focus, which is nice. I think there are very few systems out there that really focus on this. At the very least, out of the big ones that deal with the aspects of survival to some extent. And finally, long sandbox campaigns. Tactiquest Shrines. in games that are of at least 5 to 10 sessions, giving players time to take on objectives at their own pace, slowly growing in power. This also allows some systems like crafting and classes that interact with such systems to work as intended. Yeah, general just quickly general rundowns. Well, not much else to kind of add to this, because you know these elements are just, you know, the general characteristics of the system, which, hey, if this is the kind of game you're looking for, maybe you should check it out. If you like combat, if you like tactics, if you like battles, like aspects of resource management and survival, and of course you are within a group that can, to the best of their abilities, have game sessions frequent, then yeah, and long-term arcs. This could be a system worth for you to check out. Now, for design goals, decisions before drama. Many tabletop RPGs prioritize telling moving, dramatic stories above all else, while Tactiquest campaigns involves roleplay and story. The narrative is secondary to giving players tactical decisions. This includes combat tactics, but also managing resources, money, time, limited inventory, alliances, and goals. These aren't busy work getting in the way of the story, but the core of the game, which is completely understandable, completely valid. Again, there are systems out there for many facets. I'll be honest, I don't think there is a, to be fair, I don't think there's ever gonna be, or there has been a system, in my perspective, or from what I've seen and from what I've looked into, that could cover most of the pillars, because, you know, there's many aspects of tabletop play, and you know, you have roleplay, you have combat, you have exploration, you have investigation sort of games, and having all those aspects into one, it's one system, it's always gonna be hard to kind of like create or emphasize. It's either gonna be way too laborious and way too stuffy in rules, or it's just not gonna be detailed enough in my opinion, or equally, even worse, technically, or not necessarily worse, but it's quite obvious that, you know, when it comes to like core pillars, you can't really go with all of them at once, because no game or no group is ever gonna be like, oh yes, we are interested in all of these. You're always gonna have a your group is always gonna, like, you know, shift towards a few of them, and you know, it's also the general kind of rule of thumb, in my opinion. If you create something that appeals to everyone, the thing that you make, it's most likely gonna be mundane or mediocre. At best, it's gonna be mediocre, which in my opinion, that's even worse than being bad, because mediocre means it's forgetful. If it's bad, at the very least you remember it, it's being bad. But if it's mediocre, that's it, you're just gonna forget about it. You're not even gonna take note of it, which is, in my opinion, in the gaming space, or in general in the entertainment space, that's the worst kind of thing you can be. Being mid is probably worse than being bad, and usually trying to appeal to everyone, that's kind of where it leads to in general. Honestly, to be fair, these have been discussions and something that we've kind of been learning. Like, the most important thing for you is to have something memorable, no matter if it's good or bad. You know, again, we go under that kind of, you know, saying there's no such thing as bad publicity. I mean, yeah, even if what you've made is bad, technically, probably a lot of people would not necessarily be inclined to check out whatever is gonna happen in the future. But at very least, people will remember what you've made. But you know, being mid or having something mediocre, it's most likely you're just gonna fall into obscurity. I think that's it's been a part of my perspective, and a part of it of kind of how I've always viewed general game creation. Always try to find a niche. Always try to find something that you as the creator enjoy and find fun of, or find a space where something is missing and try to fill that void, because that's more interesting in my opinion. And you know, it's also that mention of creating with limitations offers a lot more abundance than just being you know, boundless in options. It leads to more interesting concepts to be limited and to just have everything at your disposal. Okay, I would love to give like an example of a game that tried to appeal to like most people, but I honestly cannot say, because I guess to kind of go akin to my example, I may just truly do not remember the game. Definitely, I probably played a game that tried to appeal to everybody, but just do not remember it. To be fair, I think if we're jumping from the tabletop scene, like the video game scene, where I guess, you know, tabletops have had a big influence about it, and, you know, things like MMOs, usually. I guess that's a place where you could say there is that concept or that aspect of having as many things to do as possible, because that's the concept of the MMO, having many ways of play, many ways of engaging with endgame content, or having forms of endgame of different variety, from, you know, PvE, PvP, roleplay, all sorts of like customization, explorations, collections, and all that kind of thing. But you know, MMOs are kind of designed to be for a player type. The whole idea is that very few people that are extremely dedicated would ever engage to all those systems at once as they play. Most people usually engage with one or two of them, maybe 3 at best, and that's gonna be it. But they're never gonna engage through with all of them. And even there, you're probably always gonna see MMOs that do certain aspects a lot better than others, and then they're never gonna excel at doing all aspects of endgame or all aspects of all of their systems in equal amounts, or at the very least give them the same amount of treatment. But even there, they still lean towards a niche or towards a specific type of game. But yeah, so tangent aside, which is gonna be usual. I'm usually going to tangents. Expect it. It's not gonna. That's how it goes. So more games, less load, compelling choices, cost complexity. You need more moving parts to create points of decision, more levers for player support, which costs time and brain space to remember and run. Tactiquest aims to get more games, more decisions out of fewer rules, less time spent, less hassle. 2 rolls into one roll into none. Cut superfluous extra steps. The end result is still a heavy tome of text, but every rule serves a purpose. That's really good, especially for introductory aspects, to start easy and then from there to maybe branch out into complexity. But you know, and the more refined a ruling is, the better. Then short, sweet character builds. Classes cover a wide variety of classic fantasy archetypes, from grizzled fighters and squirrely sorcerers to more oddball options. Even classes filling a similar role feel distinctly different in play. Characters usually have a few punchy, impactful abilities that change the dynamic of the game, rather than a wide pool of underwhelming situational abilities and scattered +1s. Even new players shouldn't take more than half an hour to make a character. Again, quick and to the point. Basically, I'm from all of this, I'm understanding that all of it is just basically have everything set up in as quickly as possible, then just jump in and start the game. Don't necessarily have to lose yourself into the details, which is really nice, because that can be a big turn up for a lot of people, that, you know, they feel like they have to understand a lot of concepts and a lot of systems, and could be a bit daunting to them, and not willing to kind of like jump over that next step of actually playing, because, you know, people kind of lose themselves into creating the character, understanding the rule systems. So yeah, definitely, at least from how it's initially described, it's being fast and succinct in most rulings. That's a claim that a lot of the games makes, but Tactiquest definitely actually succeeds in. Yes, again, different folks, different strokes for different folks. I suppose I can understand that certain concepts and certain rulings are harder to understand, and sometimes everybody has their brain wired differently, so it's completely fair to understand that some people may not grasp information the same way. Some are more visual learners, some prefer the way I do it personally. It's just understand the core mechanic, like how you roll, how you do all that sort of thing, and then just jump into the game. Also, I'm gonna take a break here as an ad break has just come up, and I'm gonna continue that thought after the ad break, so I'll see you in a few minutes. There we go. So, for anybody new here, just a kind of like a quick rundown. Usually when an ad break hits, which I have them scheduled once every hour, also it's also a point for me to take a break and for you to also kind of take a note and take a break as well. So nobody's gonna lose any moment of the stream while an ad break is happening. Of course, if it's within my ability to pause the stream, if we are talking about anything like, I don't know, multiplayer, or hey, I'm in a collab or with other people around on stream, then yeah, definitely that's a high likelihood that I'm not gonna be able to take breaks during ads. But if it's just me in things, doing activities where I can easily put a break at any moment, then yeah, I do my best so nothing gets lost. Plus, it's nice to have a hourly 5-minute stretch, 5 to 10-ish minutes. Sometimes the break can be a bit longer than the ad itself, but nice to kind of don't be constantly on the screen for too many hours. But yeah, I completely forgot the thought I had just after I paused the stream, because that's how my brain works. So yeah, I was talking about it's generally kind of built around the whole concept of have everything basically set up at most within an hour, but even that seems like a lot within at least from how it's described so far. But having basically everything quickly set up and jump into a game, which is an important factor. I think I'm remembering where I wanted to go with it, because it can be a deterrent for some people. The aspect of having a ton of things to consider when it comes to both character creation, starting the game, and also understanding the rule sets, and that can be a lot of a turnoff for a lot of people. I've even heard the suggestion, and I think like I've also heard this kind of like a side aspect of, usually when you do a session 0 or like a prep session, it's also good to at the very least have people also engage a bit into the game as well. So I've always heard like this kind of suggestion. I've not yet been able to put it too much into practice myself, but it's always nice to, I've heard that as an alternative to always kind of after with session 0 concludes, to maybe even have like a quick one-off scenario, so people feel like they've not just been there to handle the logistics and the bookkeeping as it is, because for some people that's not necessarily the fun part, and it can be a bit of a deterrent. The way I usually go with it and the way I kind of run things is, all I ask for players is to understand the core principle of how the game functions. Like, what is the core mechanic that they need to have a grasp over, be it that understand how you need to roll, if in case we're talking about TTRPGs that use dice, or probably in this scenario, just a core rulings or maybe set of rules that you need to quickly have grasp of. Anything else, we can learn them as we go. I'm more of a bigger proponent of learn as you go and understand the mechanics as you encounter them, and then necessarily having to ask of the player to be like, hey, understand this big chapter of the book first, and then we can play the game, because that's a lot to ask other people at times. Some people may just not, as I said before, some people just may not be engaging, may not find the engagement, or cannot find the rulings easy to understand in writing and reading, and more into practice. Again, kind of more of the visual learners or practical learners, I suppose, because I'm more of the latter, the practical learner. I always understand things a lot better if they are put into actual examples or into actual use, and then just being I don't know, theorized to me. I've never been good at theory myself. I've always been good at the mathier side of things that I can actually, you know, replicate or put into practice, or, you know, can do over and over again. And I feel like in general that's for most people that's an easier way to learn the game, and it's less to ask of at the same time. I think it's an easier way of entry. But yeah, having the game system being in such a way that you know, we can easily have everything set up and jump into play, so that there is all people, everyone that, you know, jumped there for their first session feels like they've done something that they were kind of expecting and hoping to do. It's really good, because, you know, some people take joy into character creation. I myself, I do that a lot, because, you know, I'm an alcoholic. I've made many characters. I have too many. I've had way too many and still have them. And to some extent, I've started to port them over into other systems, specifically D&D characters. I've had too many of those. Some of them have even been ported over other systems in case, because at this point, I'm not necessarily retired, but D&D has been done less and less around my place, or at least I'm not around into groups that have been too heavy on D&D in recent years. So yeah, whenever I have the opportunity to play a system that might either could fit the theme of some old character concept I have, or that just D&D adjacent, like how Gestalt was, because the first character that I run in Gestalt was, as I've said in the past, it's technically a reinterpretation of my first ever character from that I've ever run, just a bit more refined as a concept, and I did love him. Iv was a pleasure. Was a joy to play with. And even the one that we currently have for the Pathfinder game, that will happen again sometime in the middle of this year, hopefully. It's also based on an old character concept of mine. Technically, that was the follow-up character of my first ever character that died in that campaign, but the campaign never continued after my character died, so that was kind of like a weird thing. But yeah, somehow my death flagged also the end of the entire campaign, weirdly enough. It had nothing to do with that, personally. It just fell off as many campaigns happened. It just weird. But yeah, and I already had like a character concept made, prepared, and just ready for all of that. And yeah, and that character concept, it's really old. Technically, again, adapted and refined to kind of fit with also the system and the concept, but overall it's kind of the same character. Oh yeah, alcoholic is a good word. Yeah, that's kind of my general thing. That's also the shindig I do in any game. RPGs, MMOs, multiplayer games that can have multiple setups of characters. I have them. Believe me, I don't ever have just the one. Even if I still have a main, I still have several made. Either for me to determine my main, or just because I wanted to also occasionally experience other things or try other stuff, kind of as a break from the main. Like WoW is a good example. RPGs, I have a few all seen there as well, and many others. But yeah, more so that players can jump in pretty quick. For Game Masters, it's pretty prep heavy game. Understandably, so I can get that. I mean, to be fair, for a combat-focused game, I would expect that there should be some prep aspect for the Game Master side, because, you know, you need to set up the combats. I'm suspecting there's gonna be some elements here and there where you can make some combats on the go, or some sort of like scenarios on the go. But probably the more interesting and the more fun ones, and to be fair, but even the ones that even from like personal experience, the more interesting ones are the ones that, you know, you put a bit of thought over it, and you know, prep them in advance and have some interesting ideas and mechanics and interactions happening there, and that, you know, requires time. That's completely fine. You know, at the end of the day, you're the game master. You're kind of signing up yourself for this. You know, unless, you know, you jumped into a game system that is designed to be as minimum in prep as possible, because, you know, those are also understandable, and, you know, also like a big reason why people shy away from the game master role just because they don't want to deal with the prep or deal with all the setup. And, you know, understandably. But yeah, to kind of continue and moving on, and to kind of finalize this mini chapter, not really chapter, this section of the chapter. An open-ended sandbox. You are expected to drop players into a map and let them wander, choosing which goal to tackle and when. Character options are designed around this freedom, so it lets parties with unique imbalances to play to their strengths and work around their weaknesses. It's another source of tactical decision. So, load-bearing rules. These are rules that these rules are things you might not intuit are important coming from other systems, but are the core experience. But are core to the experience. Sorry, they're not afterthoughts, and the game won't work right without them. Travel and crafting. You are expected to use and interact with these rules. Many classes involve them and are terrible without them. It's really important the game master is using random encounters, kind of akin to, I guess, old school RPGs, but you know, where you travel, you also on occasion hit encounters as well, which can be fun. I've had interesting moments come from random encounters in the past, so they can be fun. I'm always kind of the type of, you know, spice them up somehow, find something interesting to add to them. It's not just here's a group of goons that you need to fight, and next time you hit a random encounter, here's another group of goons that, you know, they just might look a bit different and they are different in numbers. Yeah, I love travel and crafting rules. I think the biggest part of random encounters is making them relevant to your world. Like, yeah, first and foremost, when it comes to random encounters, make sure that the random encounter makes sense in the place you are. Like, if you are at a mountaintop, don't have weird, you know, beachside or like desert creatures. You know, I don't know, have yetis, have weird, I don't know, weird burrow worms or creatures that resist the cold and have some sort of like pertinence to it. You know, you are in swamp areas, maybe have a fight with a troll, which all of a sudden that's another like big thing and different kind of thing, like, which changes up, because, you know, you might fight one creature in one way and the other one in a different way. That's the first aspect. Then, you know, there also comes the aspect of, you know, add to the environment into play during those random encounters. Like, you know, going back to the snowy biome, if you're more closer to kind of a mountain cliff or you're escalating a mountain, have elements of, you know, of avalanche or terrain slides or anything else of the sorts, you know, or difficult terrain of some degree. Elements of survival can also come into play as well, but maybe if you have an encounter during a rough part of weather, that could maybe also affect some aspects of how you deal with the combat in that scenario, and you have to rethink how you approach it. We'll have to keep another thing into play. Like, there are ways even to, you know, to spice up random encounters as well, so they don't just feel like, you know, you've thrown X thing that have which is an A amount of them, and then next random encounter is Y thing with a B amount, and, you know, spice them up. It's don't just keep them numerical in a way. Or if you have numerical thing of, you know, the more variables you add to the encounter, the more interesting it is. And then, you know, also the way it concludes, it's also fun. I've said this story in the past. I've had a random encounter with like 8 or 7 veterans, I forgot, for one of my D&D games. I knew that my party was a bit overpowered, so I bumped up their HP a bit within their kind of maximum HP range, just so I was sure that they would survive. One of my players basically fireballed the entire group in one go, and they survived the fireball. None of them died. And, you know, the player that had this interesting decision, like, hold up, these fuckers survived, and to be fair, it was a bit metagaming. I'm not gonna deny it, because I'm pretty sure that he kind of knew that those enemies would have died pretty quickly from the fireball or something of the sorts, or would have not been as so resilient as they were. And then, you know, we went into this kind of weird negotiating kind of section instead of combat. Because to be fair, it would have ended. It would have ended in a massacre for, you know, the veteran side, not their side anyway. So it was interesting, and by the end of it, they come up with they basically got themselves a mercenary band hired, because they had the money. Of course, they had the money, so they just hired them. And here, you're now our mercenary band to protect our guild house. Go ahead. That stuff, and putting like local factions, villains on your encounter table, not just nameless road bump enemies. Yeah, that's also like a fun thing. Kind of goes into that example, because I did run the Dragon of Icespire Peak, where, you know, the big bad of that mini adventure, which is like a starting adventure for D&D. The big bad was a white dragon, and a big mechanic of that entire campaign is that in every location that you went, you had to randomly decide if they would encounter the dragon or not. Because the white dragons in D&D are known as being the kind of hunter types. They are the most bestials of the dragons, and they are kind of, you know, the type to kind of hunt often and hunt a lot, and in most of around their territory. So, you know, the whole concept of the campaign is that wherever they went, there was the chance that they would encounter the dragon, and that would never been a good thing. There was one time they were about to kill the dragon in one of the random encounters, and I had to like quickly fucking dip that dragon out of the encounter, because I was like, no, I don't want you to die in this fucking random encounter. I want you to die the way the campaign has set up for you to die. So let me just find a way for you to retreat, because oh boy, this campaign is gonna have a turn of events that I would not expect, and I barely got it. I fucking barely got it. But yeah, definitely that's another aspect. If you have interesting elements of the story that need to be emphasized, put those into there as well. Be it, you know, whatever factions you're dealing with, elements of the villains or the villain themselves could also be there as well. Yeah, things to kind of change it up, keep it interesting. Prices and rewards sizes for money and monsters parts are very deliberate and carefully tuned. Read the treasure sections in the Game Master Guide to know what to give and how often. It's an aspect that I always like, especially for game masters that are not too experienced, or might just be at the beginning of playing a system and have not yet gauged the balance of the game. And, you know, having very clearly determined systems put into place to easily figure out what kind of loot a character of X advancement or X power level, or, you know, a challenge of X difficulty should offer. It's always good to have, because, you know, otherwise I've been in the place of where I've offered probably things that were too powerful to offer for that you know, low level of the party, and I kind of fuck up the bell curve, and all of a sudden now my party was overpowered. It's always nice to have clear-cut aspects of these, especially for those who are new coming to a system, or in general are, you know, not the best when it comes to like figuring out the balance. Inventory, by default you can carry 10 items. Not finite items. It's tempting to casually discard inventory limits to cut down on things to keep track of, but that is not worth it here. Also, your carry capacity and equip slots are separate mechanics, so don't get them confused. Interesting, nice. I always went with the concept of, you know, carry things that are within sense and logic. Like, you know, you can't carry a fucking anvil on your person. That's not something for you to do. And, you know, and I've seen like the slots thing. I've seen an interesting suggestions, kind of and I'm suspecting you're probably doing a similar thing. The kind of like Resident Evil style of, you know, basically you have inventory slots, and things fit kind of in a very Resident Evil kind of way. You know, oh, you have a sword that is 2 slots. You have maybe a quick, small, insignificant item that is 1 slot. maybe certain things stack, certain things don't stack. That I think that's at the very least, if you don't want to run with the numbers, that's a nice way to do it. Having both, of course, adds more depth, because you have to take into account both weight and density, or weight and volume. Sorry, because yeah, something could be easy to carry, but it could be voluminous as shit. So good luck, doing it. And also manage other things like, I don't know, drawing a sword. Yeah, wanted to put that there and try to prevent new game masters from accidentally giving out hundreds of gold in the first session, because that breaks the game pretty bad. Yeah, I've had players who've hustled their way into a ton of gold, and I was the fool to be like, yeah, you should have this gold. Sure, why not? The game doesn't tell me that I should not give them that amount of gold. I like how flexible the treasure quest reward rules work. Sad anvil noises. Yeah, I mean, to be fair, again, at the end of the day, I've run in a game that was a bit more high fantasy, and a bag of holding came into their possession pretty fast. So, at a certain point, carrying capacity was kind of thrown to the winds anyways, because a bag of holding can hold a ridiculous amount of things, and said anvil with a ton of weapons was instead bag of holding, and one of the characters was a blacksmith. So yeah, things got crazy quick. Armed a ton of people, all that kind of shenanigans. But yeah, elements, they're not status effects. These are different. Those are different mechanics. A thing that cures one does not cure the other. These are long-term debilitations inflicted with uniquely nasty enemies or environments. Yeah, another way to kind of, as I said, spice up combats and environments. Add aspects to kind of play around, change things up, add weaknesses, even if temporary. Modifiers, how I like to call them in general, or status effects, but a modifier can be equally positive or negative. Combat, everyone should know the basics. There's a quick reference sheet, which is nice. I always like those, especially for people who are just jumping into the game, so they have a quick rundown. Like, here's the main core things that you need to understand and need to do, or could do, or should consider. And at least one person should actually read the entire combat chapter. Said person, most likely the game master. It always be like that. But it makes sense. But I always appreciate a quick reference, guys. Then, as player expectations, you'll have a player character and play with them within the game master's world, and use the rules on page 12 to create one, which we're probably gonna get into it today, because we're getting through these pretty fast. Because yeah, as I mentioned before, I like to kind of cover these in chunks across multiple streams. So when I started covering a system, expect my usual run through is 3 to 4 streams to cover an entire rulebook. If the rulebook is substantial, and credit to Jan, this rulebook is substantial. It's 200 pages, so yeah, that's a lot of stuff to look into. So fucking props to you for doing all of this. Also, they say thanks so much for the follow. I do appreciate it. Yeah, I'm usually trying to kind of cover up to a certain point. There's a possibility today is probably going to be a shorter stream day anyways, just because, it's Sunday. It's not usually the day I stream. And I'm still trying to kind of get back to my full energy self. I've skid ahead into your chat. I do appreciate it. Once again, if you want to chat, you can chat. If you want to lurk, you can lurk. That's completely fine. I appreciate it. Either way, lurkers are welcome here, so it's completely fine if you want to interact or not. The hard part wasn't making more game. The hard part was keeping it to only 200 pages. Oh, buddy, I feel ya. Believe me, I feel it. To be fair, that's the biggest challenge when it comes to game design. Because you get as a creator, you get lost in the sauce pretty fast and start making shit, a ton of it, and get detailed or descriptive or start getting into higher and higher higher level or granularity when it comes to rulings and or concepts or ideas, and you realize that you need to stop, you need to cut down things to the essentials and make sure that it's described as succinct and as easy to understand as possible, which that's the challenge. I can tell you because I've been the I can equally attest to this as well, because I've managed documentation for a lot of for basically the entire game design document for a video game, and that's a lot to keep a count of, and a ton of the documentation was done by me. So that's another thing. I've been the archivist and equally the one that makes sure that the rulings are understood. You know, if somebody, because we also had this kind of flow, if somebody prototyped a concept and they were not necessarily fully documented it themselves, then if they didn't have the time, I would have taken the responsibility of documenting it and also start thinking on the higher levels, because this is not necessarily as much into tabletop RPGs, but it can also happen into tabletop RPGs. But you know, there's also this aspect of you have to detail certain interactions, make sure that, or at the very least, the most expected of interactions are covered in case you have like edge case scenarios. With video games, you need that more often than not, because you know it's all about that entire shit needs to be coded and put into a game and actually function. It's not just running through our brain. So yeah, that's like another thing. But yeah, it's always, honestly, the bigger side of it is just keeping it succinct, and that's always been a challenge. And putting limitations, you know, I also go with the 10% rule. Make sure, like, you know, it's okay if you go like over 10% of your goal or below it, and that's completely fine. But yeah, that's always the challenge. Oh boy. Then ground yourself into the world as the game master about their setting. Give your player character's ties to the world, a very important aspect. What battles have you fought? Who have you fought for or against? Where are you from? How have the world's troubles affected you? And who you might have history with. Yeah, in general, that's the most important part. Make sure that when it comes to like character creation, aside from just, you know, making your character and having fun playing your character, make sure that your character has stakes in the world and they have reason to, you know, care for things that are happening in the setting and are not just there on the whims. And even if they feel like even if to some extent maybe you've made characters that would not necessarily have too big of stakes, at the least give them a reason why they would want to get themselves involved into all of this as well. You know, that's kind of been an aspect of kind of how I ran my character, because technically he had no stakes or no interest in the continent itself or the world he was kind of part of too much, because of how that character was designed and how the concept was thought of for Iv. But at the same time, I gave him an interest and stake in the sense of he still kind of, you know, uses this world as kind of a mirror to his old one, and you know has probably certain prejudices based on how his own home world has been. Plus, you know, the whole aspect of probably wanting to get back to his own place or find his place again would give him some sort of stakes of, you know, having interest in, at the very least, being engaged with powerful people or with people that might have the connections that he is looking for. So at the very least, give them a goal that would make them interested in taking part in a world that maybe they are not a part of, at the very least. Now, look for trouble, be curious about the world, seek its mysteries, make friends and enemies, get into fights, have strong feelings on things you encounter. Yeah, just be out there. Fuck you and you in particular, and just fucking body him if that's your thing. Completely legitimate. I've had sessions where, I don't know, just the players at some point, even though not at all designed by me and not at all in any way intended, or nothing of the sorts was thought out to be that way, but just sometimes the players decide that we're gonna have a vendetta against you, and that's just gonna be it. Deal with it. You might be the nicest person or the most, you know, uninvolved character, but we just decided that now we're just gonna hate you, and you have to deal with it, which is fun. Look for trouble basically boils down to take big swings, and I like it. Yeah, I mean, high risk, high rewards sort of scenario, and I think that is pertinent. You're there for an adventure, and you know, the bigger the target you want to go at, the more interesting the adventure is gonna become. That's for sure. Then think as a team. No one character or player carries the campaign by themselves. Be invested in other player characters. Align your goals with theirs. Create opportunities and share spotlight. In combat, your party has near complete control over what order you go in and whether you act before the enemy. Use this control to coordinate your tactics, setting up ideal situations for each other and to take advantage of. Fight as a group. Don't just wait until your turn comes up and to be involved in the game. That's something that I always find important, and cooperation is I think the aspect that always makes combat way more interesting. Like, yeah, there are many systems and many games out there where you can, even if not intentionally, at the very least accidentally, come up with concepts or characters that all of a sudden can wipe out entire combat scenarios. We've dealt with that, and you know, it really depends on the type of group that you are in. That's completely fine. If you know, certain groups are completely fine if maybe one character is particularly I'm the one that does the big things. But I personally also enjoyed the aspect of, you know, tactics and cooperation. And to be fair, I've always been the type, at the very least on the player side, to kind of to be a role fill. Like, I usually have a concept, have an idea, but in case I'm a bit more open-ended at that time, I'm more okay to kind of jump in with this whole shtick of, okay, what are you all picking? I'm just gonna pick something that's gonna synergize really well with the rest of you, and kind of go from there, and just have fun that way. To be fair, mostly it's also the fact that in most games I've always been the support type, or like that's kind of the archetype that I usually play. So that's also like another reason. I've never been kind of the fragger or the one who deals the big deeps. Especially since Tactiquest is non-lethal by default, with only a select group of enemies breaking that assumption. And it's fair. You know, the high risks are not necessarily the risk of death in most scenarios. But of course, death is an important factor to add for, you know, to create a bit of stakes in certain scenarios, but it doesn't necessarily have to be at every corner of the world, or at every moment of an encounter. Because some people are not necessarily looking into having character death as being a big thing, or, you know, at the end of the day, you made that character. You're definitely that character, even if not intended. It's a part of you, and to some extent, I would always say that characters are maybe even vaguely an extension of you. So it makes sense that you're attached to them, and you're gonna feel bad if you lose them or if they die. You know, it's completely also equally understandable if you are part of a group that doesn't want aspects of, you know, death and lethality to be constant, or maybe just an aspect of high stakes in moments to moments, or in moments where it really feels like it should be important. So that way, you know, people can enjoy their characters without that risk, but at the very least add other sort of consequences instead for failure. Then, take initiative and be decisive. Scheme, conspire, and collaborate with other players, but don't get bogged down in the debates. The game is going nowhere. Pick a plan and commit to it. We're doing this plan now, unless anyone objects, is a good way to get a concrete yes or no on an idea where the group's hesitating and wasting time. That's clear. That's definitely a point. Either the game master in some situations could be the arbiter, in the sense of, hey, this is taking too long, let's make a decision here and now, this is the plan, yes or no, and go from there. Or, you know, somebody from the group can also akin to that. I've been in moments where, you know, some sessions have been prolonged just because we got into semantics and into discussions and talks and how we should do things instead of just, you know, playing, which can happen. And there, yeah, you definitely need somebody to kind of like put their foot down and be like, yo, let's just get back to what we were doing, let's not waste any more time and just do something engaging and not, you know, getting into debates that may not necessarily be of value right now to get into. To be fair, I've also had people encountered, or at the very least had at one point a player that was very particular when it came to rulings. Not necessarily to some extent rules lawyery, but more into the aspect of he found ways to kind of like interpret the rules or find or in different ways, or take that interpretation to other conclusions, or utilize that interpretation in other scenarios. And, you know, sometimes we got into like weird semantics, because, you know, there's this whole shtick of, you know, rules as intended, rules as written, rule of cool. So, you know, we get at some points we got into semantics, and yeah, at times probably it should have just been like, yeah, no, we just should stop, not get into this combo any longer, just keep at it and having our fun in chat. But yeah, that kind of covers the player side of kind of what to look for into the game. For the game master side, the game master plays the world and the people, places, and things within it that are not the players. Fill a world with adventure, create a world full of secrets, strangers, schemes, problems to solve, monsters to fight or flee, dangerous dungeons, and enticing treasures. Draw land on a gridded map, dotting it with towns, fights, adventure sites, and other points of interest. Pair it with an encounter table to spice up exploration, and see the Game Master's Guide for Guidance, which I'm pretty sure that's a separate rulebook. There's which is we're gonna look into it. I'm suspecting that most of the Game Master side is within that book, and this mostly covers the main the core books, the core rules, and aspects for the players to take into account. So that's to look into after the fact. Yeah, once some of the broader strokes of this core book has been looked over, then yeah, we're also gonna check the Game Master side. Then adjudicate actions. The rules for most non-combat actions are loose and open to interpretation. This is deliberate. It leaves rooms for things to work how the players and the Game Master feel like they should. Part of the Game Master job is to telling the players the results of their actions and choices when making a ruling. Go with that, with what seems believable, interesting, and fair. And those last two are most important. Now, don't be afraid to solicit your players' ideas about how a situation should resolve if you feel uncertain. yeah, that's completely fine. Especially if you feel like there is something that could be within the purview of that specific player's character. If it specifically involves them, and you know, at the end of the day, you want to kind of give them the spotlight, kind of give them like, what are you expecting out of this, and how do you exactly want to kind of conclude this, and basically offer them the spotlight and the moment on stage to do that, because especially if, you know, if it is particular to them. Enable player-driven sandboxing. Players should experience your world in a non-linear fashion, tackling challenges in the order that suits them best. Don't tailor the world to suit your party's strengths, but keep the challenges within it varied, enough for every character to contribute. A good adventure is full of opportunities for strategic and narrative decisions. It should be your highest priority. Yeah, not much to mention here. Like, if sandbox is the style of play or the way it's designed, then yeah, go with it. And it's a lot more fun. I think it definitely, to be fair, sandbox have the benefit, and I think the appeal of, you know, everything is kind of a mystery. You do not know what's beyond that corner, and you know, you wanted to check it out and add the elements to kind of make it interesting and fun and engaging, and feel like every time you're kind of doing something new, or it's not necessarily the same thing you've done at the very least a few minutes ago. And that's gonna keep it engaging. And create fun and strategic battles. Tactiquest goes out of its way to make enemies easy to run and fun to fight. Again, the Game Master's Guide will help you quickly to design compelling combats, which we're gonna look at once we get to that book in an upcoming stream. Then give information freely. Your descriptions are your players' window into your world. They can only make informed decisions if they know the circumstances and the stakes. Telegraph dangers. Use game mechanical terms when necessary. Don't hold the player decisions they wouldn't have made if you'd been more clear. Yeah, always try to offer information to kind of like give the players an understanding. It's yes, not everything should necessarily be thrown on the table, but as mentioned there, telegraph information, which could be something like, you know, how an enemy behaves, the detailed descriptors of the environment, the enemy itself, maybe even some of the actions that a player take might have a weird outcome. You know, as kind of be mentioned there, you know, whenever you're fighting something that, I don't know, let's say it's resistant to fire, you mentioned that, yeah, you swing with fire, you see a singe, but it's not as then you tell your player that, you know, your experience with these kinds of weaponries, and you know for a fact that in normal the wound is not as deep, or at the very least, so it's not as burned as most who have dealt to the end of, I don't know, your fire blade in the past. So, you know, again, telegraphed information. You know, the player has done something, and you through their action you have given something, you've given any information. That's also like a part of the fun of it, kind of having this a bit, kind of also a bit puzzle solve, kind of solve it into a puzzle where you can give a few clues, the players can test them out, and you kind of give them that information as it trickles down. And of course, and after that point, if the information has become common knowledge for the group, then you don't necessarily have to keep it secret in the near future. If, for example, you decide to have an encounter later down the line with a creature that might be similar to the one that they might have fought prior, where they've discovered that information. So you can be a lot more transparent in that moment of, hey, you fought this creature before, so just so you know, so just so you remember, these are the things, because that's also fine. sometimes, you know, it's hard to kind of keep track of everything, and not everyone necessarily is a note taker, or at the very least they might have a note taker type on their table. So it's also nice to kind of at times, you know, to keep that in mind of, hey, this is a type of enemy that they've encountered in the past. They should know that information at this point. And of course, anything else that would be made pertinently obvious, like, you know, tell the players that there are pools of lava, or that, you know, the pools, the hot pools are, you know, of lava or some sort of like a hot liquid that would definitely singe them off, and they would realize that without necessarily having to actually dip their foot into it. So, you know, again, also use common sense of certain elements of the environment or of the combat or of the encounter might be a clear cut from the very get-go that the player should know that, hey, maybe you should not deal with this. Yeah. Or sometimes it's just been 7 weeks since the last time they've encountered that creature and they've forgotten they had the note. That's also like another thing. Definitely. 100%. Anything else, anything of the sorts, like, and also this kind of goes a bit into the aspect that, to be fair, that's more on the player sides of the metagame. If the players might have some familiarity, it's fun, at the very least how I do it is fun to kind of like play into the idea that maybe you do not know necessarily what the creature does, but if you know the metagame, play into it to kind of reveal the creature's traits or the aspects of the encounter. That's also like another fun thing. Like, you know that you outside of the game will know that this creature, maybe it's fire resistant, but the character themselves does not do it. So maybe you take the bullet and decide, hey, I'm gonna make this attack to be a fire type, so that way, you know, we have this information cleared and revealed, and it's kind of like a fun way of kind of showing that, hey, it's the character that's learning, not you. But yeah, at times it's fine for the game master to be there to as the additional keeper of knowledge, and not necessarily keeper, but a purveyor of knowledge, in case the players might have forgotten, may no longer have that note, or who knows, or maybe the creature is not initially clear cut, but from your perspective you feel like it should be, so, you know, you give them that info. It definitely never should be necessarily just a game of secrets for the sake of secrets. It should feel like it's a puzzle. It should feel like, you know, the players are, you know, engaging with the environment, with the story. It's a part of investigation, and, you know, to kind of reward their skills of inquiry. And then from that point on, once that has been done, that's basically their reward. You now have this information. You're probably not gonna lose it. At times it's fun to, you know, if you're talking about like a ton of in-game time and that has passed from time to time, maybe it's fun to have that occasional moment of, hey, maybe you don't remember maybe you know, you have to utilize your actual memory to remember like, hey, is this how we fought? But that shouldn't necessarily be the norm. That's something that if the players feel okay with it and feel like it's a fun aspect, that depending on the scenario, if it's a long span of time, it could be something interesting that maybe the player character no longer remembers themselves either. So now that's also part of their journey to kind of remind themselves of what was this encounter about. So, kind of onto that point, you know, but create a sense of mystery. The world should feel big, mysterious, full of hidden dangers, and ancient things waiting to be unearthed. Have NPCs describe distant lands and dreaded monsters in rumors and superstitions rather than concrete facts. Be stingy with complete explanations, but generous with hearsay and tall tales. Never let the players feel like they know all there is to know about the world. Make discoveries, raise as many questions as they answer. Kind of like a good example, or at the very least a concept idea that I've heard in the past, and I really like it personally. And, you know, this is also a bit particular to me because, hey, I'm a vampire VTuber, so I guess I'm a bit particular with these things. There is this concept that, you know, if you were to define vampire as just being a bloodsucker, then across cultures, myths, history, and folklore, there's a ton of vampires, and with a whole set of particularities, each of them. To the point that, hey, there's an entire game system that basically details some of the more popular particularities of the vampire. That aside, there has also been the interesting aspect of some aspects of the vampiric, condition, be it weaknesses, strengths, and all that, have been created by the vampires themselves as a form of misinformation to kind of have, the general common folks to spread around, so the adventurers may not know for fact what is fact and what is fiction. So they have to kind of, deduce, like, if this is a weakness for the vampire, if this is not a weakness, the whole shtick. For example, I think like a good example I've heard, like, what if, vampires should probably have, especially those who can charm and do any sort of that aspect, should probably have access to some sort of illusory magics, so they could properly recreate reflections of themselves in the mirror if they wanted to. But at the same time, what if the whole rumor of not having a reflection in the mirror was made up, so that people have a false sense of security when they try to check out a vampire but just using a mirror reflection? Of course, I am fully aware that the myth came around because back in the day, mirrors were made with a silver backing, and it's the whole shtick of vampires being weak to silver, so silver will not reflect the vampire. That's kind of where the myth came from. But at the same time, you can also create this particularity of the rumor of, hey, this has been created to kind of create a false sense of security. So if people test the vampire with this false rumor, they pass the test, and now they have been wonderfully invited into a new abode for them to have their fun their way with. Things like that. Like, yeah, turn certain aspects also into an investigation game. To some extent, like, some people have made this interesting example, especially when it comes to like fighting mythical creatures or dreaded creatures in a campaign. Turn it into kind of like a hunter, or like kind of a Witcher-esque kind of quest, where you have to like start to figure out what are their weaknesses, what are their strengths. Probably you have to go scouting for things that fight against, take advantage of those weaknesses. Maybe they have certain, they are weak to certain sort of, I don't know, poisons or other sort of ailments, types of metal, anything like that. And, also that whole, the entire encounter prep phase can be made into its own adventure for the party as well. So putting this, kind of throwing this out there of having this kind of bag of rumors alongside the facts can kind of keep the players on their toe and kind of create an adventure of its own. Then tailor to rules, the rules to suit your needs. Every rule serves a purpose, and discarding one usually breaks something. Still, no rule set is perfectly suited to you and your group without a few tweaks. Play enough to know what's load-bearing and then make the changes as needed. Again, as in many situations, personally, when it comes to like tabletop RPGs, rules are a guideline. Of course, certain games are more designed to follow those guidelines more than others, but in general, rules are a guideline. If you and your group decide that something is not fun, change it, make it in a way that you want it, or just full on remove it, ignore it, and just keep the things that that make the game interesting for you, and go from there. That's completely valid and fine. It's your game at the end of the day. Nobody's gonna judge you. And finally, when it comes to what rules to know, there is the combat basics. Later there, travel, the above mentioned task resolution, and other quick guidelines and quick reference sheets to be mentioned later down the line, which we're probably also gonna have a quick look at them once we check the main chapters. But yeah, that overall I think covers the player side and the game master side. There are now aspects of the world, map notation, tracking time, other small things of the introduction. which we're gonna look at. But first, I think I'm gonna take a quick break because I think there should be an ad coming up in any second now, because I had the ad notification. So I'm just gonna take a break in advance, and I'm gonna return a few minutes within the ad break and ending. So yeah, I'll see you in a bit. And there we go. Now we can continue. So we've checked a quick rundown on the what for the player to expect and what the game master to expect. Now, what are some general concepts that you and details and mechanics to kind of encounter within the world of Tactiquest? The general details of the world are up to the game master. Nothing is set in stone, but there are some broad strokes the designer had in mind. First, common folk lead rough lives of tiring labor and little reward. Under the boot of armies and empires, few are satisfied with the state of things. Most stay where they grew up for their whole lives. Tales of what lies more than a few towns away are embellished and unreliable. Humans are common. Outsiders are seen with suspicions, but few towns have just humans. Then, adventurers, vagabonds in search of treasure, knowledge, freedom, fulfillment, love, revenge, or closure, gave up a simpler, safer life for this. Not above common folk, but their lives are much more interesting, treated with suspicion and curiosity by commoners and rulers alike. Nobles, scheming, self-centered bastards, power corrupts, and even gentle rulers have blood on their hands. If one shows up, they're either a villain or an obstacle. Some fancy themselves as heroes, but they're not. To be fair, that is probably the... it has been mentioned a lot in storytelling, and that I would say to some extent is pertinent. That the most interesting of villains are those who believe themselves to be the heroes of the story, or to... the ones that are the most interesting are the ones who believe that what they're doing is for a greater good, for a common cause. Or, the ends justify the means sort of scenario, but, in the pursuit of what they perceive as being good. Because I think, like, they would be more engaged with whatever the party is doing and with the happenings of the world, because they could have some interesting... kind of fallacies where at times they might seem that they are acting in good, but in most scenarios it's self-interest, and at others they might even have a certain perspective towards maybe even the party or other entities or organizations, of seeing their attempts and folly of trying to do better, and the villain themselves trying to convince that their way is the only way, and maybe even in some cases kind of coercing those others into their cause. Creates interesting scenarios overall. Then, violence. Death is serious, but violence for others aims to test one's strength, to resolve dispute, or to drive off rivals is common and widely understood. So yeah, not... As mentioned before, when it comes to combat, always approach it with a sense of, what would happen also in the reality of, in real life. Most creatures, especially sentient creatures, have a sense of self-preservation. So, very few, aside from the fanatical, would be interested in fighting to the death. There is a point where they reach a point of injury where they would flee, surrender, or if the numbers are whittled down into few, and they just would straight up end hostility. I mean, it's not always, and in most scenarios it shouldn't be a fight to the death. Tabletop RPGs, because it could also be the mentality, the kind of gamey mentality that probably a lot of us jump in on it, kind of have this thought. Kind of have this thought that, everything has to be like removed from the table, and only then conclusion has been reached, where it's not necessarily the case. Well, like, this is the list. This list is like the big one for getting the Tactiquest vibe. Yeah, because in general it kind of tells you kind of how you should expect to run a game, which is completely fair. Where, you know, there's a very obvious theme of class war, which in general it's kind of the only kind of war that you kind of encounter in general. Like, if you whittle it down, everything it kind of boils down to being a class war, even historically. So it's the most it's the most familiar style of story that we can have. You know, this mirror of, you know, everybody just living in their own bubble, and how anyone from the outside, it's seen, anything that is from outside of that bubble is perceived, where even the adventurer is put within that perspective, is always interesting. You have a better idea on what to kind of expect, and what exactly, what sort of interactions to see, to kind of to expect or to see within the game, because, you know, there can be equal amounts of commoners that would be fascinated by the adventurers, being, you know, some of the extremely few who have been around beyond the borders of their mundane life for the commoner, in the perspective of the commoners. But at the same time, some might see it as those would destroy their comfort, their safety, and their status quo. So, you know, interesting conflicts to arise. Then you have faiths. Power can be drawn from the earth and sun, both revered as holy. There's little consensus between those who claim to speak for them. And many more faiths can be found if you know where to look. Strange calls and forgotten rites are feared and frowned on, but the spark of hope they offer attracts followers all the same. Magic is respected and feared. Magic users practice it openly in towns. Practicing it openly in towns are rare, but most people know of a nearby wise woman or reclusive wizard one might seek for knowledge or aid. Magic comes from many sources: incantations, artifacts, spirits, demons, and celestial bodies. So, you know, your flavor of magic might vary from point to point. Not any magic is the same. And monsters are dangerous natural predators of humans and other peoples. They are widespread and very deadly. Unlike killing a thinking person, slaying them is always a heroic act. And finally, distant lands. Local knowledge of far-off lands is limited to frightened rumors and myths. What lies beyond those mountains or across the sea, none can say for sure. Only one way to find out: to travel to those places yourself. But yeah, kind of definitely encompasses the classic fantasy nature, as long as with this with the aspect of enforcing exploration, enforcing a level of conflict equally that could be within these pointers, can be equally translated as, you know, a conflict in a more combative state, but it can also be conflict in a more social ways, as, you know, as possible, because you have you know, the aspect of nobles, adventurer, common folks. Oh, I also missed this point: faraway peoples. Elves, orcs, goblins, and the like are an uncommon sight, met with wary curiosity and drawing attention wherever they travel. People are complex, whether someone is a dwarf or a kobold or a human has some bearing on who they are, but tells you little about their true selves. Yeah, sorry, I completely missed that one. I don't know why. I think I thought that this was like the end of the page. But yeah, as I said before, it generally kind of covered that. It definitely emphasizes aspects of conflict, aspects of exploration, also through how kind of like the general broader strokes of the world are. Of course, from these pointers, you can then expand it as much as you want to, you know, add more depth and more intrigue to it as you seem fit. But even just keeping it at these kind of like quick one-page bullet points to kind of have as a reference and what to think about each aspect whenever they come into play. If you have no clue, if you are not really sure how to approach it, these pointers can be like a good way to kind of like go back to, have a quick reference, or like, okay, these players, you know, the party is looking to reach this location that is far from where they currently are. What exactly can they obtain from the villages, from the people of this I don't know, village, city, wherever they may be? And this could be a good reference point. It could be beyond the purview, or beyond the knowledge and the beyond their accessible knowledge, aside from rumors, intentional or not, made to fear, to bring fear for them to actually reach such heights, which can also be another point of storytelling. So they might get little to no information, or at the very least, if they get any sort of information, most of it is probably going to be as a form of warning that whatever it is they are looking for in the beyond is something that they should not bother with, which, you know, can bring a lot more intrigue, not necessarily intrigue, but it can be a way to kind of like hook the players by saying like, I know that place is dangerous, you should probably not go there. And I'm like, dangerous, you say? Bet. We're checking it. You know, it's also kind of like, that's also like another fun way to do it, just playing kind of a bit of a game of chicken with the players to kind of like nudge them in that direction. Like, of course, the choice is still theirs, but you know, there are small little psychological tricks you can make yourself to kind of convince the players to kind of do their shenanigans. Then math and notation, the number side of the game. When math or order of operation becomes unclear, refer to this guide. Dice notation. The group will want one or two standard sets of tabletoprpg dice, or polyhedral dice, however you prefer to call them, mostly used for helping the game master set up situations in play. Oh, hello there, raiders. Hi there, Zakari. Thank you so much for the raid. I do appreciate it. What were you doing? What were you playing? If you want to like talk a bit about it, you're completely welcomed, or maybe like of a fun moment of the stream. I do appreciate it. Either way, thank you so much for the raid. Oh, you're also within the tabletop stuff. If you want to talk a bit about it, completely. You are welcome to do so. Were you playing something? Were you talking about something? Maybe designing, creating some stuff within a tabletop? I would love to hear it. I'd like to hear people like gush about tabletop RPGs in general, so please feel free to do so if you want so. In the meantime, for anybody here from the raid, if you do not know me, hi, I'm adreansulph. I also go by Card. Call me however you prefer. It does not bother me. I am a Vampiric Casino owner. Around here, I like to check out indie games, talk about ttrpgs as we are doing now, sometimes play them and also design on them as well, and also just check out games that, you know, are comfort games in general, RPGs, because shocker, I like RPGs. Talking about tabletop RPGs, you know, usually right now in our butts of grinding in Warframe and playing some Final Fantasy 14, probably some, and also checking new releases here and there when I get my hands on something newish. A bit rarer these days, but that's whenever I have the opportunity, I'm also gonna check out new things. Yeah, that's the general thing and general vibe around here. For anybody from the raid, if you need to step out, have something to drink, eat, take a breath of fresh air, detach your eyes from the screen, need to take a bit of a rest, or anything else of the sorts, please take care of yourselves. Your health takes priority over everything else. You've been there for a stream already. I completely understand if you need to dip out and do other things. It's completely fine. I appreciate you just jumping in, saying hi, and then being off your way. But hey, if you decide to stick around, that is also completely appreciated. I do like that. Hi there, and thanks. I was playing a solo campaign of Legends of Akroth, a game that's going to start funding in February. Oh, that's interesting. So I'm guessing it's a GM-less sort of system. That sounds interesting. Definitely not familiar with it. Just gonna Google it off screen out of curiosity. Ah, I know how to type. Don't. Okay, yeah, GM-less adventure. Thanks. Yeah, I'm gonna head out in a few and do some stretching. It offers a gameplay for group play, solo, and game masterless. Interesting. That sounds cool. I need to look into some GM-less sort of systems. Mostly because I was kind of thinking maybe it would be interesting to have some GM-less maybe streams at some point. That could be something fun. Of course, if we ever reach to a point where, you know, I feel like, you know, we reach to a consistent amount of people around here on the stream, I would also love at some point maybe even do some aspects of like running a game with chat and that sort of thing. That also sounds like a lot of fun. Of course, there's a lot of logistics to figure out there, but that also sounds pretty cool. I know I'm not the first one. I've seen others. I think Doug I know that did like that with their stream at some point, and I'm pretty sure others have done it as well in the past. I know it's not like a revolutionary idea on my end, but you know, I would love to do it on my side. And game masterless systems are also something that interests me, because it'd be cool to kind of like check out and maybe even play them on stream. Oh, it's going pretty well when it comes to like current backing. Initiative, grid. Ah, limit breaks. I see. Very Final Fantasy inspired. Looks of it. Neat. Looks cool. Keep an eye out. I think I have like I think I might have some sort of GM-less book around my current collection of PDFs of systems that I have that maybe at some point we can check. I'll look into it, because definitely I did mention this in the past. I am kind of running short on actual books for me to cover, because you know I have my own limitations in that regard. So there is a point where I'm not sure. We're probably gonna have to change up a bit of the formula for the weekly tabletop streams. After, you know, probably after covering this, I'll see if I'm hoping that maybe I can get my hands on Beam Saber, because I'm, as I said, I'm in a trade discussion with a friend of mine to get my hands on that. So we might have something new to check out at some point, but if not, yeah, definitely new things to look into it. And probably like I think I remember having like a GM-less PDF thingy, and that could be something interesting to do. Also, I appreciate the follow. Thanks so much for it. Yep, inspired by many classic JRPGs like Fire Emblem, Dragon Quest, and Final Fantasy. That sounds fair. I'll be fair. I think I've said this in the past. It's mostly because it's not been like a big thing around these parts where I am from. JRPGs have been not the biggest things. Like, I've recently got myself more into JRPGs, and you know, Final Fantasy being kind of like one of the few ones, and more specifically Final Fantasy 14, because you know, free trial and all that, I can easily play it, and you know, it's an MMO. I'm a sucker for MMOs, so of course I've kind of jump into that. But yeah, I'm also definitely kind of got a bit more into it in recent times, and I'm having a lot of fun with that. But yeah, once again, thanks for the raid. As I said, if you need to stretch, dip, all that, that's completely fine. Viewers included. I'm just gonna be out here. For those who do not know, actually, because I should probably say, what I'm doing around here right now, and for most of my tabletop streams, is I usually go over rule books, core books, whatever you want to call them, of certain systems, either systems that I want to look into it or try them myself, or some that have been recommended by me to some, and I found them interesting. And look over them, basically kind of have like a, be it in most scenarios, kind of like a first time impression through and read through the main components of the rule set on stream, have my perspective on it, and you know, have a bit of chat about all of that. Currently we're talking about Tactiquest by level 2 janitor. The RPG is pinned in the chat, so you have access to the itch.io page. It's freely available. You can catch, you can grab it for free. Of course, if you are able and you can, and want to, you can also show a bit of support to the creator as well. What I have here is a work in progress, or at least a version that has yet to be released of the current public one. So there might be some different aspects of the rule set that you not find on the public version, which is something I think I forgot to mention when we started the stream. That yeah, I have a work in progress version of it, an editor version. So there might be some elements that are not yet present in the main book. So if you find some discrepancies, just to understand, that's the reason. That's the main reason. Equally, from my understanding, it's still in its playtest kind of version. It's still subject to change in some areas, so you know, expect that the system to kind of have its occasional revisions of certain mechanics and certain concepts from time to time. So it's not like in a finalized state anyways. But what I have right now here on screen is a not yet public version that, you know, Jan has been graceful and wonderful enough to offer and give access to me. Yeah, add it to my channel collection to check out later. Have a good stream. And always have a good rest of your time zone, whatever hour it is within your day. Let's get back into our own topics. So, we are talking about dice. It was mentioned that you would need at least 1 or 2 sets of polyhedral or tabletop RPG dice, mostly used to help the game master set up situation in play. These include a D20, D12, 2 D10s, a D8, a D6, and a D4. The above names refer to the number of sides. For example, a D10 refers to a 10-sided die with sides numbered 1 through 10, or 0, or technically 1 through 0 in some scenarios. It really depends on how exactly it is. The D10 one is... D10s are always the weird middle child of the dice in how they are like written. Both the percentile version and the normal D10 version. Sometimes it's 1 through 0, sometimes it's 1 through 10, and it's always a bit weird. Then there's always the always round up. If a number is divided in half, spell that has a target speed, just round it up. That's completely fair. Bonuses versus minimums. Some abilities give a certain number of certain numbers a minimum. They can't be lower than that. For example, a spell that gives the caster a minimum of 1 resistance to blade damage. Other abilities that simply add, such as armor, which grants +1 resistance, do not stack with the minimum. Okay, so minimums are just something that they can add over something that technically, I think, set over what they existingly have, or overrule, but they cannot be stacked with the bonuses and minimums. That is something different. Okay, fair enough. I think I understood that correctly, hopefully, or exemplified it correctly. Then exceptions beat the rule. When a rule, for example, you can't cast more than one spell in a round, conflates when an effect that grants an exception to that rule, a perk which lets the spell caster cast 2 spells in a round, then the exception takes priority. That's fair. Other effects, if it's unclear what order of the 2 effects go off, the one inflicting those effects chooses. If there's still a conflict, then the game master chooses. Understandable. And targeting, you can target yourself with anything that targets an ally. You are we do not encourage self-hatred around here, so feel good about yourself. You never look down upon you. You're not your own enemy ever. But at the very least, you should not treat yourself like you are your own enemy. And yeah, art needed, dice. I love the question mark. Like, maybe it's gonna be dice. I fair, like, this is definitely an offer note here, but I do love the kind of the uncertainty of it, of the offer note. Like, probably it's gonna be dice. We'll see. Then tracking time. From the clickety-clackety numbers to the ticking numbers, I guess, call it. Time measurement. Many spells and other abilities have a cast time much longer than could be done in a single combat. Sorry, carry on. These are measured on the following scale, and they are 1 minute, which can be done quickly but not in the middle of battle. 1 scene lasts for the current situation. 1 battle and its preparation and resolution is always 1 scene, which is 20 minutes at most. Then 1 watch. Each day is 4 watches: morning, noon, evening, and night. A period spent exploring a dungeon is always 1 watch. And extended periods, if something's time is extended further, it goes from 1 watch to 1 day to 1 week to 1 month. When an effect's duration or cast time is modified by 1 time step, it's 1 step shorter or longer on the above scale. For example, an Arcanist might reduce a spell's casting time from 1 watch to 1 scene. Reducing something to 1 step below a minute makes it a big action that can be used in combat. Yeah, I like the I like the structure. Honestly, I like the this one specifically, the watches. This is an interesting one that I don't think I've seen it. An interesting one that at the same time can be, I guess, more vague in numbers, where you don't necessarily have to keep track of like hours. But it's above the scene. Although depending on the game system, scenes can be interpreted as something different, because scene can be all the events that happen at a specific location, which those events can happen for most of the duration of a day. Although very rarely, it's in most scenarios, a scene probably happens for, I don't know, a few hours or something else of the sort. But I like the watch specifically. I don't think I've ever seen anybody kind of having this interpretation, or at the least this additional in-between granularity of day and scene. Especially because it kind of removes this weird like, for example, again, I'm using D&D as an example, another system that utilize concepts like D&D for the short rest. It kind of removes this ambiguity of things being active until a short rest or something like that, or reactivating up with a short rest, because a short rest can happen at whenever, and technically you never have a limitation of short rests, which can be an advantage and a disadvantage. To be fair, the biggest design of short rest is that you know, you have a limited resources of that cannot be regained through short rest that are vital to you, like, you know, hit die and spell slots in most scenario, of course, if you're not a warlock. So the game system is still designed to such a way that, you know, it kind of forces you. But at the same time, you know, when it comes to like keeping track of certain time frames that, you know, take longer than a few hours or are odd to interpret when it comes to like hours, or, you know, you have a hard time to kind of keep that. This is like an interesting like way to split the day, and I kind of like it. And the concept of watches kind of also, you know, covers I think aspects of rest as well, because I think this is also a good way to kind of, you know, you're changing your watch if you're, I don't know, like defending a place, having a rest for a longer period of times. This is also like a good way to kind of like swap around. Then for a design note when it comes to time, this game cares a lot about tracking time. It's a source of tension and resource management. You don't need a calendar, but you do need to know the week, the day, and how many watches have passed today. Your game master notes you should say something like week 1, day 1, watch 1 at the start of the campaign. Watches determine the player's run into the when the player runs into the encounter and how long a certain spell lasts. Track when settlements can be restocked, which is mentioned later down the line. That is important. It puts pressure on the player's resources and a dynamic that drives the game as a whole. Yeah, kind of pushing forward the aspects of like resource management to the end of where, you know, you have a limited amount of resources and those resources take time until, you know, they get replenished. There's no such thing as, you know, Elder Scrolls or, you know, Bethesda game style kind of time skip, or, you know, or quick saving. You bought the things, they're out of stock, now you have to wait until they get back into stock. And, you know, technically you still have to you know, time skip if you decide that there is nothing of import that happens from then to there. But you know, at the same time, it's interesting to have those moments where you also have something else that is time limiting in between it, where you would require that resource, but by the time you would be able to obtain that resource, something else will pass by that would offer some greater consequences if you do not address it. So, you know, interesting ways for players to kind of weigh down their options. Then, now that we looked at some of the mathy side and time tracking side, let's look at skills and tasks. Each player character has multiple skills to meet a variety of adventuring challenges, which fall into 4 categories. We have combat skills, which is climbing, jumping, and medicine. Crafting skills, which is crafting, alchemy, and enchanting. And lore skills, which can relate to culture, magic, military, beasts, and monsters. And finally, field skills is strength, swimming, stealth, lockpicking, stealing, smuggling, disguising, forgery, tracking, and also custom skills, which I'm guessing is probably related to class or other aspects of the character creation, or maybe some other additional additional skill sets that you want to add that are particular to your campaign. Fields and lore skills cost 1 skill point. Combat and crafting skills cost 2 skill points. So I'm guessing there is through character creation and probably through character advancement, there is a skill point by system, so good to know as well. Combat skills have uses in battle. Climbing removes the prone penalty for climbing short heights. Taking it twice allows to climb tall heights at a cost of 4 squares of movement. Sorry, carry on. Jumping allows the users to jump action to clear short heights. Taking it twice allows taking jump actions as a small action. Then you have medicine, which allows the user to use First aid as a big action. Taking it twice also allows first aid to cure a status effect. And crafting skills are used in the crafting rules, which is found on a later page. Lore skills can grant information beyond what can be directly observed at the Game Master discretion. Culture is about history, norms, lore, tradition, faiths, and myths. Magics, from forbidden rituals to identifying magical effects to recognizing a spellcaster's speciality. Military, for rival faction, political games, armies, weapons, and organized humanoid opponents. Beast is for any animals or more common mundane monsters. While monsters is for unnatural or rare foes, like undead, dragons, fae, demons, terrible foes that commoners only speak of in fearful myths. Lore skills taken twice make the study action a small action against foe related to the skill. Then field skills are more niche talents for a particular task, which in most scenarios I'm suspecting they're going to happen out of combat. But, you know, sometimes it might be required in combat as well. And skills are taken twice. All non-field skills grant mechanical bonuses for being taken twice. Outside of that, all skills taken twice grant an extra benefit when used for narrative tasks. For example, tasks outside of combat or crafting rules. The player character completes the tasks either by which it could be either by especially quickly without being detected, exceptional or with excessive flair, without unexpected cost or drawback, or share the skill with an ally for this task. So yeah, there's some equal benefits of, you know, being it stealthy, being fast about it, being good about it, or just assisting someone within the task. Then, how do you how do you reach task resolution? Tasks not covered by other rules are resolved as follows. Players' characters without a skill relevant to the tasks are as good as an average person. Players' characters that do have a relevant skill are as good as an expert. And there's usually 3 possible outcomes. The player succeeds unambiguously, which should almost always happen if the player character is relevant, has the relevant skill or gear. The player character cannot accomplish the task, or the player character could succeed with the right gear, information, or other factor, and will succeed if they obtain it. So yeah, basically it's a yes, no, and also kind of a no but sort of scenario. But to be fair, these are for like resolutions, not for aspects of roleplay. Then, for custom skills, many campaigns or character concepts involve skills not on this list, such as languages. If a setting has factions that don't speak the player character's language, a new language costs a skill point. Narrow crafting skills. A player character might specialize in one aspect of a crafting skill, only special arrows, or only weapon oils, so these can cost 1 skill. Narrow lore skills, highly specific lore, like only undead or only divine magic, are taken twice for 1 skill point. And custom subsystems. The Game Master may have unique systems tailored to their campaign, sailing for one, taking place across an archipelago, a new type of crafting, ways skills improve harvesting monster parts or trading in towns, which player characters can be uniquely skilled in. Yeah, as I mentioned, they could be related to other aspects of the game, or maybe even the character or the campaign. Class skills. Every class lists skills. Each player character must take at least 1 skill from their class list. The rest can be any skill available. Skill redundancies. If something would give you a skill you already have, you take the skill twice. if you already have it twice, you gain a free class skill of the same cost. If you already have all your class skills, you gain any skill of the same cost. So, you know, you get benefits if you become kind of like a jack of all trades in that scenario. Which I'm guessing to some extent you can build it. Oh, I forgot to remove the text after I got rid of the class skill list. But hey, I guess here's the advantage of me kind of reading through it. So I'm suspecting there is no such thing as class skills anymore, like class skills list. So it's just you're getting skills is no longer dependent on the class. Thing that, you know, you had one from the list and everything else was up to you. You just decided to, like, you know, pick whichever you feel like fits the concept. Oh yeah, that's totally fine. Hey, I guess this is the advantage of me kind of going through the actual book and not necessarily summarizing it myself. You might catch you might catch some points where you forget, which I totally get. But again, as I mentioned before, this I have a version of the core book that is work in progress. Don't take what I read here as final, and it won't reflect one-to-one with the current public version. It's just kind of like a sneak peek of what to expect. Now, I'm not fully aware where the changes has happened, because, you know, I've not have a quick skim through the official release, so I'm not fully knowledgeable. I know there's like a changelog at the end of the book. I probably should have looked at that at least. But, you know, I'll look into it and probably make a note afterwards. After the fact, so it's fine. Probably should have done that. It's fine. But yeah, take a bit of that with a grain of salt. And to be fair, the entire, you know, system is still, you know, to some extent a playtest version, and it's still subject to change in some areas. So even this version may not necessarily be the final version even once it gets released. Systems always adapt and improve and advance. Of course, there is always a point where you have to decide that, hey, this is good enough. Because, you know, if you start to obsess with just constantly improving something that you've made constantly over and over again, it just I don't know, it either becomes to a point where it loses its meaning, it's losing its purpose, or there should be a point where, you know, you kind of should understand that, hey, this I did all that I wanted to kind of like check off. From this point on, you know, should move on to other projects, newer concepts, newer ideas, or who knows, maybe things adjacent to it. You know, supplement materials, anything else of the sorts, or just completely new ideas. Obsessing to just one project, it's not healthy, and, you know, would not necessarily make the project in the long term better. At one point, you know, you need to kind of draw that line of good enough. Which I understand it's very hard, especially as a creative, to do that, because, you know, creatives are notorious to have a bit of a perfectionist streak, myself included. So it makes sense. It's understandable. That, you know, it's a muscle skill that you kind of have to learn. That at some point, you know, you need to decide when to stop. Kind of in the same line of deciding how much information is enough information, and, you know, not going overboard. You know, going back to that whole topic of keeping it to 200 pages and all that, and not going over that number, not really going too much over that number, sort of thing. Then skill redundancies. If something would give you a skill you already have, you then take the skill twice. If you already have it, gain a free class skill at the same cost, which it's no longer applicable. Or if you already have all your class skills, you just gain any skill of the same cost. So it's just this. At this point, it's no longer this. Then feats of skills. Any player character whose class doesn't grant spells by default. Even player characters with spells through other means, for example, an elf warrior or ranger with a nature magic perk, may take 2 strain to achieve some exceptional feat related to either a skill they have or the core identity of their class. Warriors are mighty, sages are brilliant, and bards are glamorous. So that's also an aspect to take into account, that you can perform your skill in an exceptional fashion. And of course, these are all non-mechanical narrative effects, usually not useful in combat. A bruiser tears down a castle gate, Vanguard holds up the ceiling of a collapsing cave and escapes undefeated with their allies. An alchemist discovers the cure to a deadly plague, though it still must track down the ingredients for it. A strategist riles the populace to arm themselves and storm the Lord's estate. Once a player character performs a feat of skill, they can't do so again for a few sessions. Yeah, it's not something that you should expect to do often, so, I would say, be encouraged to do it often, but at the same time, be careful how often you do it. I guess you can create some sort of system of your own of kind of keeping track of that. Or maybe you can make it something akin to inspiration, or, we may find moments where, hey, you've done good today. Here, I'm going to allow you for next session to do another feat of skill, even if it's already been too fast to do it again. Or something like that. It could also be an element of reward. But yeah, you can also figure out a way to kind of create a system and to keep this semi-consistent. Could be used purely by in-game time. Some amount of time in-game has to pass. It could be related to sessions. Maybe, you can do this once every 2 sessions or that. Or who knows? Could be other methods. Then, for social situations, gameplay sometimes involves trying to persuade or negotiate with NPCs, non-player characters. And this is resolved with the following guidelines. You have, sorry, I was just checking how much is it, because I also see the ad notification. So I like to kind of cover this page fast. You have bribes and blackmail. NPCs won't take big risk for the party without good reason. Usually money, but often favors, information, or repaying the player's character's kindness. Coercion can work, but always makes enemies. Money is a good deterrent, good way to encourage people. Interactable NPCs. Offer them desire, ambitions, fear, allegiances, habits, guilty pleasures, conviction, ties to other NPCs, and be free with this info unless there is reason to hide it. These traits inform how best to persuade a given character. So yeah, don't make your NPCs feel too deep, feel too thin. Add some depth to it. Everyone has a goal, something they want, something they fear, all those sorts of things. We are all humans at the end of the day. We're not machines designed to one task and to do one thing. Then, player charisma. A player's eloquence matters less than the actual content of their words. Don't punish shy, slow, or inarticulate players with failure if what they're trying should work. People care less whether you're charismatic and more about what's in it for them. And, of course, I've said it in the past, I'm also okay with the concept of, it's fine if you, at times, you have this kind of third-person description of what your character does, and, you point out kind of the main talking points of that charismatic, persuasive discussion. You don't put, you don't structure the sentence themselves. You're just making clear what are the points given within that discussion. And then, yeah, that's more than enough, in my opinion. Then the skills. There are no skills that directly solve social situations, like charisma or lying, but a creative player might leverage other skills for social benefits. Like, if they are a crafter of some sort, they can utilize their skill sets as a way of kind of, barter or trade. Like, if you help me, I'm really good at doing X thing, so I can help you do that X thing. And here, let me prove it to you. And that can be a form of persuasion, you know, offering services as it goes. But yeah, now then, that covers social situations. We also looked at some of the mathy stuff, general skills. We still have a bit more. The introduction is definitely lengthy-ish, so we're gonna look through the stuff side and then we'll see where we go from there. I'll be taking a break and I'll return after a few minutes because an ad is supposed to be hitting us quite soon, so I will be right back. Alright, there we are. Sorry for the longer wait. Had to do a few things, also grabbed a quick snack and, you know, decided to eat it before jumping back in because, you know, these are yappy sort of okay, there you go. These are, you know, like yappy sort of streams, so I don't want to like munch and, you know, hear me eat and talk between my, you know, bites and all that. So I just had a quick little snack. To be fair, I think as coverage we are probably getting close to concluding for today. But first and foremost, let's go through stealth as the final kind of sub category. To evade the notice of another, a character must not be seen or heard. To avoid being seen, you must have a hiding place, camouflage design for your particular environment, some kind of magical invisibility, etc. To avoid being heard, you must not be moving or doing anything loud. You can ignore this requirement if sneaking by someone distracted, for example, busy smithing a blade or having a conversation, or if there's a other loud noise like the chatter of a crowd or banging on the door. A player character that is skilled at stealth may hide with only the slightest obscurement or move slowly without making noise, but not both at once unless they have the skill taken twice. You generally can't hide from targets that are already aware of you and actively searching, but skills or measures taken to throw off your trail may enable it. You know, other factors to consider in some situations may make it easier or harder to sneak if, you know, the target is drunk or inattentive. You're far away from the target, it's too dark to see much. Your target is accompanied by a guard dog designed to sniff out intruders. You smell awful after adventuring through a poison swamp earlier that day. You just... yeah, the gamer smell. No one can evade the gamer smell. Ambushes, a crowd only secures an ambush when each member of that group is clearly and unambiguously hidden from the entire enemy group. And that kind of covers it, because from this point we are getting into character creation, and it is a bit, I mean, not extremely lengthy. I don't think I'm gonna, like, you know, look in depth at the classes, and probably the creature types are gonna be in passing, but I think I'm gonna bundle character creation with other aspects like equipment, inventory, maybe spellcasting and rest and healing as well. So I might bundle a few more chapters with character creation next time if we go through it fast. So basically, you know, bundling with anything else that the character might need to take into account aside from just making the character, like how they manage their gear, how they manage their inventory, you know, how they deal with spells. Combat, just by looking at the amount of chapters, that's definitely going to be its own stream. And there's some other mechanics that might be also like a separate one, because I see travel, crafting, base building, and maybe aspects of like rest and healing could also be, or that could also be part of combat, part of the same chapter with combat. We could check it out. Okay, I'm trying to like follow a sort of like, let's call it narrative structure, but more of the idea of kind of everything flows within something specific. this part was generally kind of the overview of what kind of to expect, and you know, combat as being its biggest thing. I think you know, I'm guessing overall it was decided not to summarize it, and instead of, you know, if you want to look into the combat, just check the combat section, as this being mostly a diceless system. Also, I'm saying this just because, even though technically I'm not getting too close to our usual runtime, but I think I'm fine at closing it in half an hour-ish from now. So I don't feel a reason at the moment to conclude. You know, I don't feel a reason. Plus, you know, as I said, I'm still getting back into my usual self. So maybe having a shorter stream for today is gonna be better. As I said, I'm gonna have multiple streams of this. This is not gonna be the only one. There's gonna be another one scheduled for next week, 100%. Hopefully this time around it's gonna be kept for Friday, as per usual. Had fun and excited for more days. Yeah, overall I did have a lot of fun. One quick thing, because I did say, just so people are a bit aware of what are the changes, so people know if something that I've talked about might not be might not be in their current version of the game. Overall, out of the things that I've covered so far, yeah, the skill changes, the whole aspect of class list and custom skills are part of this one, like, you know, the class list being removed, and also, you know, the custom skills being a newer addition, plus the point cost of, you know, skills that are not as meaningful are cheaper than skills that are. And anything else, there's some combat changes from the looks of it, some general changes, some aspects of equipment and crafting. Class aspects are also changed, which we're probably not going to cover, at the very least not as the main coverage. And what else? Oh, this is just the status of testing. So yeah, out of what I've currently covered, from my understanding, just the skills have had a quick revision, so it might not be as you currently have it in your version. So that's basically it. I'm probably gonna make a note of this in the future. But yeah, I would say, kind of as a, because, you know, I'm still gonna hang out for a bit. And once again, you know, full appreciation for, you know, offering me access to a quick view of what's in progress. Wait, let me quickly have a dip. Because yeah, this was generally just let's call this first stream kind of the overview, vaguely, yeah, or introduction aspect of it. But yeah, I am intrigued. I'm curious. As I said before, I've not personally looked into before, because as I said before, me personally, I enjoy the chaos of dice. I have nothing against it. I find the joy in it, but at the same time, I do understand the frustration and annoyance that sometimes the elements of RNG can offer. And so far, from what I've read of it, I am curious and excited to look more and cover more of it. That's for sure. Because, you know, for a diceless system, that's definitely gonna be interesting to see how exactly it's gonna be, structured in the general kind of mechanics and kind of, you know, rules of play kind of structure. I'm already kind of have seen elements of it through what has been mentioned for the introduction aspects of, you know, big actions, small actions, even kind of like insignificant actions, because I think my understanding skills taken twice can be used as small actions, but otherwise not. So there's an element of you know, you have an aspect of resource management of what you can do in a combat round. So there's going to be a bit of a decision there. Definitely probably going to be I'm curious to see aspects of, because it has been mentioned, elements of synergy, which is something that I always enjoy. And that's kind of an aspect that I find fun. Like, if you're not going to offer me necessarily the chaos, the aspects of tactics and the aspects of making sure that each choice offers me something different, and there is a weight for me to choose to make that choice. Like, two of them, having that idea that I have two options, but each of them offer me something different, and I have to kind of decide for myself what is best in that moment is definitely interesting. It's quite obvious it's heavier on the combat and mechanical side, but a lot of it can be easily, as has already been mentioned, can be applied to other more social aspects of the game. And as I've said before, combats do not have to necessarily be a be-all end-all, in the sense of it gets concluded when everything from the board is removed. There's elements of common sense. Combat can evolve into bartering, into negotiation, into hostage interrogation situations. So elements of social play evolve from it. So it makes sense. So and kind of taking that into account. Also, having Tactiquest is pretty weird as far as diceless games go, since I'm pretty sure most diceless games aren't close to a traditional game as Tactiquest. I am getting the feeling of it, because a vague feeling that it kind of has a bit of that gamey, or not necessarily gamey, because to be fair, there is this kind of intersect on tabletop RPGs where you have the element of tabletop RPGs, which you have the whole thing of the entire agency and use of the rule structure and rule framework is up to them, and there is no limitation in where they are necessarily applied. It's just how exactly you apply them and what is their outcome is the limitation, but not where you use them necessarily. And then there is the other side of board games, where there you have a set form of play, a limited section of play or structure of play, a specific play space, a dedicated way of playing, and that does not necessarily go in any other sort of it does not have any sort of flexibility. And there is a bit of intersect between the two. There are tabletop RPGs that at times, for certain systems or certain concepts, employ a lot more of the board game approach of how to cover. Like, for example, like elements of survival, I've seen a lot of people utilizing kind of board game concepts, or having like food tokens, the time trackers of that sort, like taking kind of like those board game elements and applying them to tabletop RPGs to kind of probably cover systems, especially in times and moments where it's more of a one-off. It's not necessarily it's not something that's gonna be present across across the game session or across the campaign. It's just maybe a one-off for maybe like either a mini arc or a one-off session kind of thing, where hey, let's do like a survival thing to kind of change up the pace, and here's how we're gonna do it, so people can quickly grab it, understand it, and don't have to deal too much with it, because afterwards they can just quickly put it aside and don't necessarily have to put it to memory. So that's something else that I've seen, if I remember correctly. There was the D&D, which I've actually pre-ordered in the past. I forgot the name of it. Let me Google it really quick. Let me go. I think I'll find it. Yeah, actually, yeah. Why not? D&D Beyond. It loads. That is. Go. Yeah, leave me alone. Okay, yeah, the Dragonlance book, The Shadow of the Dragon Queen. The deluxe edition also comes equipped with the board game of it, which they had like a separate board game version, in which the campaign has a way to actually introduce the board game as a way to kind of deal with more of the war game side of it, where you have to control armies, or determine the outcome of certain kind of large combats. Which initially, fun fact, I initially pre-ordered the deluxe edition of the Dragonlance, the Shadow of the Dragon Queen. But if you all remember, at the time when it was announced, the whole OGL fiasco happened with Wizards of the Coast and Dungeons and Dragons, and I cancelled my pre-order because of it, as a way of kind of protest. And with that money, I got the Bunkers and Badasses deluxe edition instead, which I have it here on my end, which I'm glad for it. You know, it was a good way of getting some money back. But yeah, I kind of wanted to initially I pre-ordered this one, and I've not, you know, looked back at it. There's still some stuff that I probably would like to get out of from D&D, out of just my general appreciation and just kind of as a reminiscence of, hey, I've enjoyed this game. So, but nothing within the newer editions, within the newer style of the edition that I'm necessarily interesting. Yeah, it had the board game had more of this kind of like army war aspect. I don't fully remember how exactly it was structured, and the adventure module basically, whenever you would have gotten into the points where you would have had the kind of more of the fog of war aspects of kind of fighting with armies, they've had and again, it's an optional rules. It's not if you don't have the board game, you don't need it. You can play without it, but you have an alternative way of play of utilizing the board game as a way to determine those outcomes. I'm not sure. I'm guessing they are probably a bit more shortened. I'm not sure exactly how it's structured, because I'm guessing the board game is a bit more lengthy if you just play a full session of that. But yeah, I found it like really neat way of kind of reinterpreting certain aspects. So yeah, there is again, going back to my point, there is a lot of overlap in that sense. So one second, get back to my own window. Here we go. So yeah, there's a lot of overlap within the two. So of course, sometimes when there is lack of it in a more tabletop RPG fashion, then it's replaced with a more board game fashion of it. And you know, at the end of the day, a lot of the video game concepts are inspired from board games, or people more inspired from tabletop RPGs, especially RPG games. So yeah, it makes sense that it can feel a bit of a game, because that's kind of the only way of doing it, honestly. Because okay, this is gonna be semantics a bit, not necessarily semantics. It's gonna be weird to define it in English, because it has a very language. It's very particular in language, because you have play and playing. I think that's the best way I can explain, or better say play and game. To play, it's more of a kind of a unstructured, chaotic form of doing it. You know, kids, throwing a basketball in a hoop, but not actually playing full-on basketball, just throwing in a hoop. That would be considered play. It's a very raw, unstructured form of playing a game, where there are not necessarily rules, limitations, or even necessarily a win or fail condition. It's just ways of playing, and it's just an act of playing, of just, you know, exerting, of just having fun. While a game or playing a game, it's more, you know, structured, limited. You have a determined game space, rules, limitations, win conditions, fail conditions, all that sort of thing. That's it, kind of where it fails. So tabletop RPG has a bit of that sense of play, in the sense that, you know, you have a framework structure of how and a guide on how everything comes up, but you don't necessarily have an end state of when the game is done. You have end state of scenarios or encounters, but not necessarily of, you know, you don't win, you know, D&D or Tactiquest or any other game. You just finish a session, or maybe end the combat encounter. You know, while board games are but, you know, they have a bit of that framework, while, you know, board games are a bit more, definitely, and video games are more in that game state where you have defined ends and define the limits. where you cannot, you know, the rules do not allow you to go over unless you want to forego aspects of fairness you know, or wanting to play better. Although, you know, home brewing, it's also a thing in board games as well. You know, probably everybody, I think I'm gonna give the example of Monopoly. Probably everybody has some personal rules in Monopoly, and I don't think nobody plays Monopoly as canon. Another one is Uno. I don't think anybody plays Uno as the rules in the play go. Yeah, there's that's kind of the thing. When you forgo one, you kind of go into the other. I won't necessarily say that tabletop RPGs are full on into that kind of play scenario, because, you know, you have end states at every corner, but they are not hard set, like or at the least they're not like hard ends or hard victories, where that would determine a complete conclusion. The only people that would determine that this is the final conclusion is the game master and the players in cooperation. Be it as, you know, we decide that our adventuring party has done their fair share of adventuring, they've had their mark on the world, there's no reason for them to continue their story, we should explore different stories with different characters. You know, equally, this character has died, but I feel like, you know, all things that they have done in their life have been already covered or have been fulfilled, or at the least there's nothing too specific that they would be content of losing, so I'm fine to kind of sunset this character and jump to the next. You know, but again, that's defined by the players in the group and the game master as a whole. So yeah, it makes sense that when you lose some of that, because at the end of the day, without having aspects of determining outcome through active RNG, you then have to create a structure, a structure that may have some limits, not fully. It might. I'm still quite curious to, you know, look more into it, and it definitely shows that there is a flexibility, but there is also a clear set of way of how to do every act. But, you know, it's there to fulfill a greater, not necessarily narrative, but a greater experience, which in this situation is more, you know, more to kind of encourage cooperation and tactful play. And so far, a good chunk of it, at the very least, the aspects of tactics and resource management has been kind of emphasized with the aspects of, with some small aspects of that we've already, with small glimpses that I've seen, with mentions of action limitations, elements of tracking things like times and resources, and how much you can do in a certain amount of time, and how exactly the effects stack over each other. So you always have to kind of weigh your options. It's not there's not necessarily going to be always an optimal. I mean, yeah, there are going to be optimal ways of doing certain things, but it's not necessarily going to be constantly black and white. Some things are going to give you benefits, while others are going to give you other sorts of benefits, and you just have to decide which is going to be better in the moment. But yeah, overall, I do like it. I do find it interesting. I'm excited to look more into it. And yeah, this was kind of covered, and just to kind of keep it a bit more shorter and to kind of get a bit of my rest back. That is, I'll consider this as kind of an overview stream. Next time, we are gonna check character creation, and probably we're gonna cover a few other aspects that feel like they would fit with character creation. So, you know, equipment and gear, inventory, probably spellcasting as well. Then we'll see from there. Combat, it's definitely gonna be like its own thing, 100%. I think it's gonna be a stream of its own. That's almost like what, 10-ish pages. So yeah, I think that would cover it in probably like a stream. We might be able to do like something alongside it. I'm thinking of doing like rest and healing as part of combat, because I'm guessing combat is going to be one of the main places, one of the main reasons why you would rest and heal. and all other mechanics are probably going to be left over as kind of like a separate one, and then from there I might look over the game master one and decide once I have a bit of a looks over on how exactly it's structured. We'll go from there how much of it will cover. But yeah, once again, thanks Janitor, level 2 Janitor, for giving me access to this sneak peek. For anybody interested and have participated on to the stream, the game has been linked onto Jan's itch.io page, so you can get the game from there completely for free. But you know, I personally encourage that if you are able and can, you know, show a bit of support in as many ways as possible, be it donating it, sharing it around, talking about it, all that sort of thing. And that's just my encouragement, especially if you really enjoyed it after you gave it a bit of a try. From my end, again, as with every coverage of these systems, it's one of those dilemmas of I have so many game systems, so little time to play all of them, or to find people to kind of play with, if time somehow permits, but not necessarily the people. So I'm hopeful that maybe at the very least a few sessions here and there, or maybe even to some extent, even though it's not necessarily designed for a one shot, but maybe even for like a lengthier one shot, could be something to at the least have an opportunity to look at. And you know, as I said before, my perspectives should be taken with a bit of grain of salt, considering that, you know, most of my opinions and most of my conclusions are reached just through reading them. Outside, with the exception of I think the Gestalt game and you know, all of my discussion of some of the other games that I might have played, I can't really offer, you know, also play experience kind of perspectives on it, because, you know, going back to the same thing, I have so many systems that I would like to play and run, and so little time. But yeah, I think that overall concludes it. Unfortunately, I don't think I'm gonna talk too much else about it. King of getting smacked really hard is the main reason players rest. Yeah, makes sense. I don't think I would have been shocked if it was otherwise. So now, as to kind of finalize for today, yeah, today this stream has been a bit shorter by an hour-ish or so. Mostly because I like to keep these a bit structured. As I said before, I don't want to jump out of it at a weird points and get too invested into like other chapters. So yeah, the lengths of these streams always vary because of it. But you know, my goal is 3 to 5 hours, maybe even 6 if somehow the topic I'm covering is really lengthy. It has happened in the past, even more than that. Thanks for seeing. It was really fun. It was great to have all of you around. I do appreciate it. And to be fair, I enjoy talking about these kind of things and reading tabletop things and doing all this shenanigans. So having opportunities to check other things is great for me. As I said in this, before, I'm close at running low on materials. So it has been this, you know, has come clutch for me to kind of have something else to cover. Because at a certain point, I might have to decide of doing something different for the tabletop streams. Still doing tabletop streams, just something else, because I'm running out of material to cover. Technically, as I mentioned before, hopefully maybe Beam Saber is gonna, after this one is after the Tactiquest is gonna be the next thing. Hopefully that's gonna be something I'm gonna have in my grasp, and maybe I think I have like a GM-less system that we can look over and maybe play. Maybe that'd be something to check out. Maybe we'll see about that. The play thing, I'm gonna have to think a bit more heavily on it. And yeah, that's kind of it. As I've said in the past, I have some WoD PDFs, but WoD is such a crazy setting, World of Darkness, that I feel like even though I've been kind of grasped and, you know, the system itself and the setting itself has me by the throat. It's so deep and wacky and crazy that I don't think I'm yet the person prepared to kind of talk about it or discuss it in depth as being so setting and roleplay heavy, and having so many inner facets about it. So I'm not sure if I'm yet at that point. And so we'll see about that. So yeah, thanks for the stream. I'll be sure to make it to future ones. And thank you, Jan, for being so kind, offering me this opportunity. Yeah, in usual, as I said, this week has been a special case, but usual Friday evenings to nights in my time zone are usually when I cover them. It's usually a morning-ish thing for the US peeps. So if it's like a Friday morning thing for you all, maybe at the very least have something chill to kind of listen to me yap about tabletop RPGs. And that's kind of the usual rundown, unless other things would come into the schedule. There's a possibility, not next week, but the week after that, I'm probably gonna reschedule it to a different day, because there's gonna be the Endfield release on the 22nd on Thursday, but that's a day when I'm not gonna stream usually, so I'm probably gonna stream it on the 23rd. So I'm probably gonna move it earlier, probably on a Monday or a Tuesday. But that's not gonna be next week. That's gonna be the week after that. Yeah. Also, scheduling wise, next week is probably gonna be the usual. I've not yet made the schedule because I still did a stream today. I have not posted it yet, but probably the usual. Final Fantasy on Tuesday, Tactiquest on Friday, Void Train on Saturday, and for Monday, we're gonna do a Night Abyss. But I think because I've thought about it, as I said in the past, I've kind of come slowly to the conclusion that I might conclude playing that game at the very least on stream. I just realized by playing in parallel to Do a Night Abyss and Warframe that I just want to play Warframe. That's it. I don't think like Do a Night Abyss doesn't offer anything different that would feel that feels in any way reasonable for me to play in parallel or to kind of keep up with it to the same way I'm kind of currently keeping up with Warframe. So just so I don't have to off stream or even at times on stream have to constantly do this whole shtick of keeping up or grinding up through both games. I'm probably gonna just because I was already in the middle of going through the storyline 2 weeks ago, I'm just gonna conclude this update storyline for next stream. And from that point onwards, I'm probably just gonna keep on doing Warframe streams every Monday. And though the Warframe stream and Final Fantasy stream then are gonna be shuffled around together as kind of like free slots if anything else comes around for me to play. Yeah, that's probably gonna be what's gonna happen. But for next week, Do a Night Abyss tomorrow. Then Final Fantasy 14. We are getting close. We might, if not this Tuesday, probably the Tuesday after that, we're gonna conclude and the Ram Reborn and get into Heaven's Ward. We'll have to see how quickly we progress with it. Then technical quest, as I said, going through character creation and anything that might be particular to their characters to keep track of. And Void Train to kind of progress more through the quest. I think we're close to finishing Chapter 2 in Void Train. I don't think we're too far from concluding it. And then we're getting into new territory with the newly released Chapter 3. So that's going to be a lot of fun. But yeah, now, before I go and before I leave, as usual, I do like to shout out people and to go to other places to stream. Let's see. I'm not sure if there's anybody doing anything from my friend circle that is doing tabletop related things. I don't think so. Let me think about it. Let me think. I might decide to like jump at someone who's like, I know it's like a tabletop person instead, just for the fun of it. I think I knew that might be. Yeah, I think it's been a while. Why not? First I'm gonna put it on YouTube. Oops. Tab. Okay. Now raid channel here. So I don't see them. Okay, I'll just name. I thought I'm gonna would have been able to quickly grab it. It's fine. We're going to unplug Professor's place. They are currently playing some Silk Song. Wonderful person. Wonderful game master. I had the pleasure and opportunity to be a player for one of their D&D one-shots for a charity event almost like 2 years-ish ago for like a Pride event. It was a lot of fun. Prof has been an amazing game master, and then I've also had in recent weeks for like another charity event, I've had the opportunity to play with him alongside both as players. So it also has been fun to have him on the player side with me. Amazing person, really talented, really creative. Currently playing some Silk Song, so you know, nothing necessarily tabletop related, but you know, he is they're a big tabletop enjoyer, so you're gonna be in the right hands. Now, for rating, when it comes to rating, if you're another subscriber, the first message is for you, and the second one is for those who are subscribed and have access to the emotes. And that's but yeah, that's gonna be it for today. I'm gonna see you all tomorrow with some Do Not Abyss, concluding the storyline for that and sunsetting that game for the foreseeable future until maybe a more interesting update happens. But anyways, thank you so much for being here. You've been amazing. Don't you forget that. I'll see you on the flip side. Bye.